meeting to order. For those in attendance, please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome all of our friends and neighbors and colleagues in joining us in this regularly scheduled August 2nd, 2021 City Council meeting. As you come in, there'll be a sign-in sheet on that desk over there. If you're a guest with us tonight, please sign in for the public record. I see we got a lot of people with us tonight, and welcome everyone. Happy to see you all. I wish it was always this packed up here when we spend millions of your tax dollars, but alas, here we are. This is a business meeting, but that doesn't mean monkey business. So no monkey business. No outbursts, none of that gobbledygook. Anybody does that, they'll be escorted out. So I want decorum to be kept, and everybody to be polite, and everybody to be considerate, and everyone to understand that we've got a certain set of rules that we follow up here, and they will be followed. So welcome, and thank you for coming, and we appreciate you all. And City Clerk, may I please have a roll call vote?
Councilperson Soha,
Present.
Reiner,
Here.
Veer,
Here.
Morrissey, Sharp,
Here.
Stuchel,
Here.
Pratt,
Here.
Sizer,
Here.
and Mayor Stockford.
Here.
8 present, Mayor.
Thank you, Katie. We'll move into approval of the agenda. Does any member of council or city manager have any changes to make to the agenda tonight? Hearing no changes, I'd entertain motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
A second.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Soha, seconded by Councilman Veer. May I please have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Councilperson Reiner,
Yes.
Veer,
Yes.
Sharp,
Yes.
Stuchel,
Yes.
Pratt,
Yes.
Sizer,
Yes.
Mayor Stockford,
Yes.
Councilperson Soha.
Yes.
8-0.
Thank you, Katie. We'll move into public comment on agenda items only. During this time, the podium will be open. Please state your name. For my sake, please state whether or not you are a resident of the city of Hillsdale. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes tonight, since there's so many people. Please limit your trips to 1 to the podium. Please understand per our council rules that there will be no interaction between council members and the person at the podium. So if you've got questions to ask, they won't get answered. We're not being rude, it's just one of our rules. So, you see a bunch of deer in headlights up here, believe me, we are deliberating. The podium is now open.
My name is David Turner. I am a resident of Ward 1 over on Union Street. Before I begin, I'd like to thank City Council for the opportunity you give your citizens to voice thoughts and concerns on matters that affect the people of our community. To preface my comments, I just want to say before I make comments regarding an item on our agenda, I've lived in Hillsdale the vast majority of my life. In fact, I grew up in our school systems, went to Jackson College, raised my family here. My wife and I both work here. We're not from out of town. We're not lobbyists. We're not a part of any special interest groups. We have no political aspirations whatsoever. In fact, we are not even a part of any political party, for that matter. I'm here on my own accord. I'm also here as a Bible-believing follower of Jesus Christ, and I believe each person in this chamber, regardless if you agree with my sentiment or not, was made in the image of God and has inherent worth, dignity, and value ascribed to you by your Creator. And that worth, dignity, and value was not ascribed to you arbitrarily on your birthday. In fact, long before you were born, you were knit together in your mother's womb. By God's sovereignty, He desired for you to exist. You are not an accident. If you have been conceived, which, looking around, I think everybody in here fits that bill, you are loved and cherished by the God of the universe. But there exists a contingency of people who are unable to be here and who are unable to speak up for themselves, those yet to be born. I'm here to speak up for them in favor of our city becoming a place that protects people regardless of their stage of life. And while some might argue we can't legislate morality. Most, if not all, law is in some form or in some manner legislated morality. Theft is immoral. It is also illegal. Arson is immoral. It is also illegal. Rape is immoral. It is also illegal. Murder is immoral. It is also illegal. Council members, as a citizen, I urge you to work towards making Hillsdale a place where abortion is unthinkable and human life is protected in all its stages. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Mr. Turner.
Reverend Dennis Wayne Scott, Universal Catholic Ministry, resident of Hillsdale. You know, many times we look at things in different perspectives of life, but as the pastor said there, we all were conceived and we all are part of this universe. We are all part of this world that we are partaking in right now. We have God-given rights. We have God-given things in our lives that we can do. We all stand here and we breathe the same air. We all breathe the things that we are about to partake in. We all eat. But there are little ones in this world that are part of this world that we have yet to see. But they also have a life. They also have a life to be able to breathe, to eat, and partake of this world. This country was founded upon religious aspects of life, liberty, and justice for each and every one of us. But the little ones that we do not see, they are little ones that don't have any of the rights that we have, because it takes people like us that are already here to stand up for their rights. And their rights are being obscured, their rights are being destroyed due to something that we call abortion. Not even the animals and the insects of this world abort and kill their young ones before they're alive. And scientists have proven too that through studies that at the conception that there is a spark of life that is given. And this spark of life is given to each and every one of the children that we have not seen but are coming. Each and every one of you were a spark at one time. Each and every one that's here has went through different things in their lives and the aspects of their lives. But it is time that we that are here, that made it through, that are standing here now, it's time for us to stand up for those little ones that can't stand up for themselves. It's time for us to make this a sanctuary if it needs be. But God gave us a God-given right not to kill, not to destroy one another. And every time we do an abortion, you are killing. I've sat through many autopsies in my life as a police officer. I've went through 5 of them, which I thought was plenty more. And to see the death of little ones and seeing the death of older ones and doing the things that has been there. You know, death is not something that we want to go through. And neither does that little one that's in the mother's womb right now. They don't want to see death either. They do have feelings whether you believe it or not, because they took on the spark of life. I thank
Dennis,
you.
your time's up, buddy. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Honorable Mayor, council members, and the members of the public, my name is Nimrata Carlin. I also go by Namu. Street address 10271 Highland Green Drive, Jerome, Michigan. I recently served as a county commissioner for Hillsdale County. I also currently provide interface with the county and local government, working very closely with the public, township, and the county in its entirety. I am a constitutional Republican activist since 2007. Well, today we're here. Today we are living in a radicalized communist Joe Biden administration that has committed abortion to access in every single zip code in the United States of America. And they are coming for you, my friends. I'm hoping this ordinance will be passed to prevent that corruption administration from fulfilling that promise in Hillsdale. I want the citizens to stand firm from the lying media, all right, and to stand on the truth. Today, we pro-life Americans and you as City Council have a tremendous opportunity. God has placed ending abortion in America forever. The fact of the matter is that you all who are sitting here today are an outcome of pro-life. You were fought for. Therefore, you are alive today. Not only does the Bible state that, write it down, you'd be blessed. This is from Proverbs 6:16-17. The Lord hates hands that shed innocent blood. God removes his protection from nations that shed innocent blood. It is detrimental to society and to the whole country. I'll throw some scriptures out there. Write it down, you'll be blessed. 2 Kings 24, 1-4, Isaiah 1, 15-25. Now understand that many view things in the ordinance states unconstitutional. Read it again. Don't let the devil deceive you. Sanctuary cities for the unborn, this declares abortion to be a murder, prohibit abortion industry from setting up shop within city limits. Today, the citizens boldly ask their local government to take a stand on against Roe versus Wade and the abortion industry. Let me take you to Psalm 100, verse 3. If you have your Bibles or if you have your cell phone, go about it. Know that the Lord, he is God. It is he who made us and we are his. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. With abortion laws changing in our country, it's important to note what the Bible says about this issue. Throughout God's word, it's clear that human life is precious to him. More than ever, we need biblical answers to questions regarding abortion and the sanctity of life. I know it's a common today thing to think that abortion is a simple answer to an inconvenient problem, but it's actually far more serious issue. Your child isn't simply a massive tissue. He or she is a human being in God's eyes. What this ordinance indicates is that there is a simple measure that they will be in place, that there will be no longer abortion procedures or abortion-inducing drugs that will be legal within the city bounds of Hillsdale. Our county is well known for its firm, constitutional, and family values. We're going to be the protectors and the sanctity of life, the right of life.
Thank you, Namu.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Hello, Council. My name's Cabe. I'm not from here. I'm actually from 30 minutes away in Coldwater. I'm actually an ordained minister. Church of the Latter-day Dude. It's based off of their religion from the Big Lebowski. And you might be wondering, why does that matter? Well, because it's just a religion that somebody made up, just like what you guys follow. The state doesn't have any say, or the state isn't influenced by anything I have to say. The state isn't influenced by any deity or God that we believe in, may not exist. What we do know, though, is that there are actual people whose lives are actually being ruined because they're being forced to have kids and can't afford it. Rape victims? That's pretty much all I have to say to justify it for me. I don't know about you guys, but kids being raped, forcing them to have kids, being fined if you have that abortion because it would kill you if you had it, doesn't seem right to me. Doesn't really make any sense. And considering there's no abortion clinics in Hillsdale, I don't see the point of this particular thing that we're doing here. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, bud. Appreciate you.
Jeff Rogers, 251 West Bacon, right here in Hillsdale. I have the purpose of being here today to champion life. It is interesting to me that as a black African American, growing up in a family of 10 boys and 5 girls, that I made it out. Many blacks are aborted. The eugenics project started in Texas for the purpose of getting rid of people that look like me. And I look just like every one of you if you move a millimeter of my melanin. And if you get your identity from your melanin, you're pretty shallow. But I digress. I fought in Desert Shield and Storm, Iraqi freedom for the right of other nations' people. And I stand here today to fight for the right of unborn Americans. Today I stand here as a citizen, and I stand my ground to tell you, City Council, that you have a duty, a God-given duty, to make an important decision. Choose life. Why are we having this debate? We're talking about life. Look, I fought in the deserts. That's where I got my tan at, in Iraq. And I tell you what, we fought for people's lives. And here I stand in Hillsdale, Michigan, fighting for the life of the unborn. This is simple. Choose life. If we don't choose it, none of us will be here. Hillsdale should stand for the life of the unborn. I implore you and beg you, choose life. I drove here, threw some water on my body to get here quickly, to come here because this is important. This is no joke, councilman. History will judge you. You will be judged. You will be judged. Choose life. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate you.
My name is Josh Coletta. I'm a city resident. I'll have to rush since the time limit was shortened. Tonight you're going to hear a proposed ordinance that would supposedly outlaw abortion in the city of Hillsdale. The ordinance is entirely unconstitutional, unenforceable, and will only waste the city's money and time and resources to defend it in lawsuits that the city will unquestionably lose. Now, I could go into all the reasons why it's unconstitutional, the inherent right of all people to body autonomy, and why this proposal's description of life, or more accurately personhood beginning at conception, is both scientifically and legally incorrect, and the fact that we are not a theocracy. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to turn the focus to you, the council. Firstly, I want to address Tony Veer and anyone else who is backing this proposal, which I presume includes Greg Stuchel, since his wife Heather Trichka is the vice president of the county's Right to Life chapter, and the person who was flown in from Texas to orchestrate this charade proudly shared a photograph of himself, Trichka, and Bud Veer, who is president of that organization's local chapter. To them I say this: you are a disgrace to this city, your cause, and your associations. You intentionally rushed this proposal to the council, sight unseen, because you knew that it would be opposed by a majority of city residents, and you are attempting to subvert the will of the people. You are wasting the time and resources of this city, and by extension, my time and resources as a city resident. But worse than that, you are attempting to pit neighbor against neighbor and drive out anyone who opposes your extremist authoritarian agenda. Which does not stop at this topic. This entire city's population should be standing with me right now and demanding your resignation from this council. You don't deserve a seat at that table. You have forfeited that privilege. Secondly, to this entire council, you have abdicated your responsibilities in this and several other recent matters. You have refused to hold city officials accountable for their actions, such as Greg Stuchel attacking a member of the public for sharing their opinion at a TIFA board meeting. Excuse me if I'm a little nervous, I'm rushing here. Or Lance Lashaway for attacking voters who made a choice he didn't like. And on a side note, I applaud City Manager Dave Mackey for attempting to do his rightful job in that situation. You have refused to remove the city officials who betrayed this country by engaging in the conspiracy to commit sedition on January 6th, including Greg Stuchel, Robert Soha, and Lance Lashaway, the last of whom is likely to face federal criminal charges for circumstances surrounding his participation in that crime. On top of all of that, you have generally ignored a global pandemic which hit this county harder than any other county in the entire state of Michigan in its first 6 months. And the coronavirus continues to run rampant here, in no small part because of your failures in leadership. You have shown yourselves to be weak, spineless, and entirely unwilling to do what's morally and legally right, quite often choosing what's morally and legally wrong instead. Thirdly, and bringing it back to this ordinance, this is not the job of city government. This is a federal matter. The organization behind the effort knows this fact. They want this city to be sued so that they can take the case to the Supreme Court, and make no mistake about it, City Hall will be tied up in the effort when it should be focused on issues that it actually has authority over. Recently, this council put Robert Soha in his place for presenting a convoluted resolution that would have declared the city's opposition to Governor Whitmer's emergency orders, the Equality Act, and a whole slew of non-existent boogeymen that the fear-mongering right-wing authoritarians have been using to energize what precious few among their base are still alive.
All right,
Each and
buddy.
every whereas
Time's
in
up.
that resolution addressed matters
Time's
of
up,
state or
Joshua.
federal government.
Thank you
Do
for
the right
coming in.
thing. Oppose this resolution.
Appreciate you, buddy. Thank you.
Honorable Mayor, council members, I'm Dr. Bud Veer. I know most of you. I've lived in Hillsdale since 1967 as a practicing physician. Delivered a lot of babies. Recently, one of my granddaughters delivered her first baby. The baby weighed 9 9 pounds 2 ounces. I told her, you know, you don't have a newborn, you have a toddler. Wasn't her first pregnancy. Her first pregnancy was a tubal pregnancy. Tubal pregnancies endanger the life of the mother. The pregnancy was terminated. And this ordinance would allow that exception, the life of the mother exception. That should be clear. There's no confusion about abortion. The purpose of an abortion is to kill the unborn child. If the unborn child survives, and sometimes they do, it's considered a failed abortion. I urge you to consider giving, at least in the city of Hillsdale, the unborn the same rights to life that each of you have and all of the people behind you. Just that. Just equal. Not anything more. Just equal. The right to live. And I urge you to approve this resolution.
Thank you, Doc. Appreciate you.
Members of the City Council, my name is Adelaide Holmes and I reside at 31 Howder Street. It's pretty obvious to me that we have a lot of varying opinions in this room, and regardless of what side of the political spectrum you're on or what your religious beliefs are, I think there's one thing that we all agree on in this room, and that we all believe in human rights for every human being, and that it's wrong to intentionally take the life of an innocent human being. And we might disagree about who counts as a member of the human family, but I would like to urge you all today to consider that differences of size, level of development, environment, dependency, race, or color have no bearings on whether or not you have the right to live. And this ordinance protects the right of our most vulnerable people, the most vulnerable of our citizens in this area. And because there's no difference of size, level of development, environment, or dependency that I think should make it okay to kill the youngest among us or the oldest among us, I would urge you to pass this ordinance because it will end the discrimination against the unborn and allow them to have the right to live that all of us enjoy now.
Thank you, Ms. Holmes. Appreciate you.
Hi there, my name is Catherine Watkins. I'm actually a resident of Hillsdale County, so I'm not within the city limits. But I thank you for the opportunity to address the council today. I promise that I will try to be as brief as possible. However, some of the details of the story that I'm about to share might be a little disturbing. I was on the phone with a dear friend of mine the other night from Houston, Texas. As we are all aware, Texas is leading the way with these oppressive petitions and is in fact partially responsible for this one with Mr. Dixon, who resides in Texas. In May, the state of Texas passed their heartbeat bill, which contains very similar provisions to the one we're addressing here today. Despite our rights under Roe v. Wade superseding the Texas heartbeat bill, which isn't set to go into effect until September 1st anyways and cannot be enforced legally, the effects of this legislation are already having dire consequences on the medical needs of the women of Texas. When I told my friend my anger about hearing of tonight's agenda, she broke into tears and shared a story that she had been keeping private for several months. This story is ultimately about her 16-year-old daughter, who for privacy reasons, we're gonna call Lindsay. Lindsay was born with a collection of congenital abnormalities affecting her heart and kidneys, and she had been told that she would not survive carrying a pregnancy to term. Earlier this year, Lindsay was found to have been the victim of sex trafficking, and to cope, turned to drugs to numb the pain of her trauma. At the height of her downward spiral, she was found in a highway median unconscious by friends of her sister and was taken to the hospital at her mother's request for a psychiatric evaluation. There it was learned that she was pregnant as a result of her traumatic experiences. Despite knowing of her medical conditions and several doctors agreeing that she would be unable to carry the baby to term, it took an additional 3 weeks and 4 doctors to find a doctor and a hospital willing to take on the liability to perform the procedure, as the elective clinic found her not to be healthy enough to undergo the procedure outside of a hospital setting. By the time she was able to have the procedure done, she was urinating blood due to kidney failure, had to be pumped full of IV antibiotics, and almost died on the table. And all of this is caused by the confusion and fear regarding what is legal for providers surrounding a newly passed bill that is neither currently in effect or enforceable under current federal law. See, these laws don't need to be enforceable to affect doctors' decisions regarding a woman's necessary medical care. They cause dangerous situations and undesirable outcomes in decisions that should be only between a woman and her doctor due to the confusion that they create. Lindsay is still recovering, having suffered further permanent kidney damage due to the extensive time it took to find her appropriate care regarding a pregnancy that she had no consent in creating. Situations like Lindsay's may not be the majority, but in a city like Hillsdale, where no elective abortions are performed, have ever been performed, and nobody is requesting to perform them, it is these types of emergency situations that will only be affected by the passage of these laws in Hillsdale. Adding fear of civil litigation that could retroactively affect providers if Roe v. Wade were ever overturned will play a role in their decision-making process and will undoubtedly lead to needless suffering, infertility, and death of women who are refused care and must take extra time to seek it elsewhere. These laws will also make women suffering miscarriage for pregnancy that she more than likely wanted less likely to seek necessary medical care for fear of investigation, litigation, imprisonment for supposedly intentional miscarriage. This causes women who may have a hemorrhage or retained fetal tissue to bleed out or develop life-threatening infections, infertility, and death. These laws will do absolutely nothing but harm the women of Hillsdale County. Yes, I said county, which brings me to my closing statement. Hillsdale City Council members are elected by the 8,000 residents of the city of Hillsdale to represent their interests. However, the city of Hillsdale is also home to the only hospital, as well as the only 3 OBGYNs servicing the 46,000 county residents, and is the point of transport in any emergency situation for all county residents. Therefore, by leaving this decision up to the city council, you are making decisions on the medical care for the other 38,000 residents of Hillsdale County without any representation on the matter.
Thank you, Catherine.
Both our state and federal constitutions guarantee every citizen the right to appropriate representation.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you for coming.
Hello, my name is Ashley Moore. I live at 19 River Street. I don't know if I have to say that, but I'm 17, and I think to myself very often, what would I do if I got pregnant? I was raped at the age of 12, and it was a very traumatizing experience for me, and I thought I was pregnant. I'm very glad that I wasn't, because as a 12-year-old, you cannot take care of a child, and as a 12-year-old, I don't even think you can go through with a pregnancy and live through it. I don't want to talk about the termination of a fetus, but about the life of children. Excuse me if you'd let me take a breath, I'm a bit shy. More than 35 million Americans live in households that struggle against hunger. Almost all of those households contain children. Over 400,000 children in the foster care system in the U.S., 114,556 cannot be returned to their families and are waiting to be adopted. As many as 28% of kids are abused in the foster care system, and 7 million children live in a household where at least one parent is dependent on alcohol or drugs. Children are not cheap, they're extremely expensive because we live in America, and more than 36,000 children are homeless. I understand that our lives are all meaningful, but not all lives are good. A lot of children are suffering, a lot of children are abused, a lot of children are neglected, and I was one of those children. Up until last year, I was neglected by my mother, and I didn't see my father very much. Speaking of my father, he is a ward of the state. His mother was addicted to coke and crack and a lot of different disgusting drugs. And because of that, he was taken into the foster care system where he was sexually assaulted, neglected, abused, and was used by a lot of different men and women in his life. I don't believe that if you can take care of a child, that you shouldn't. But I do believe that if you can't take care of a child, then you shouldn't. You should not have a child if you are not ready to. Not all people are able to have children, and that's sad. But not everyone should have children also. There are a lot of people who don't know how to communicate with children, who get upset when toddlers cry, who use drugs, who sexually abuse them. I'm sure I'm not the only person in this room who was sexually assaulted as a child. I'm sure I'm not. And that is a disgusting thing to go through. Yes, all lives matter, including the ones in your stomach. But if you cannot give them a good life, then you should refrain from having them. foster care systems are overflown. Food is getting more and more expensive. Our water is being taken from us by pipelines. And I would also like to say that the murder of a child is more important than the death of a pregnant woman. A woman can die giving birth, a woman can die being pregnant. And since I was sexually assaulted at 12 years old, if I was pregnant, I probably would have died trying to give birth.
Thank you, Ashton.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Linda Quiggle, and I reside at 1100 North Bund Road, which is in Hillsdale Township. I've lived here for 16 years. I have helped out with Right to Life in the past, and I've also helped with the Heartbeat petition. And one of the reasons that I do that is because I do believe that life does come from God, but also that every life is important, as we seem to at least agree to a certain extent on that issue. One of the things I would like to address, or a couple things that have been mentioned, is that less than 1% of abortions are taken by women whose lives are in danger. So we're talking about a very few people here. I've also known people that have been raped and had their children, and I think the biggest thing that we need to do is, this is great what we're doing. I think it's awesome that we're saying we want to defend life. But we need to back that up with some other things. There is a couple that actually have their roots in Hillsdale County that just about 3 years ago started a ministry called LetThemLive.org. And they took and had a unique idea. They took the statistics and put them into action, and that is, the main one is that 70% of women that have abortions, it's because they don't have the support that they need to raise the baby, and mostly like financial support. And that's one of the things they help out with. They help out with counseling, financial matters, getting people away from abusive situations. So I would encourage the people in this room to not only support LetThemLive.org, but to come up with your own ideas. We do have a clinic here in town, but this is very important that as we're talking, as you heard some of the stories, that people do get in situations where they don't have support to raise these children. We need to have adoption services, different things set up. I know that there are some that we're working on things, but we need to get going with that. If we're going to be doing this, we need to provide support for those women.
Thank you, Linda. Appreciate you.
Good evening, Hillsdale City Council members. I'm Judy DeVries, and I'm a retired community college teacher, and I'm actually from California. I guess you could call me a temporary Hillsdale resident because we're volunteering over at Missiondo, never can remember how to say it, for a few weeks with sewers. And I never expected to be speaking at a city council meeting while visiting such an amazing area that we've heard about all the way from California. It's really a fabulous place. But having witnessed in California how debased a community can become, I wanted to urge you to please pass the Sanctity for the Unborn ordinance tonight. I've spent Fridays for the last 30 plus years in front of our local abortion clinic in California, and I can't begin to number how many hurt souls I've talked to. No matter what the circumstance, abortion, murdering one's own child, is a horrific, permanent solution to a temporary problem, a temporary situation. My husband and I have taken in over 25 homeless pregnant women many of them had previously had abortions and were just so saddened by it. They regretted it terribly. Some even spent their time since that abortion trying to get pregnant again to replace that dead child. On the way to church yesterday morning, we noticed the Helping Hands Pregnancy Resource Center here in town. What a far better solution for the moms and babies, a helping hand. I also discovered that Mission Doe collaborates with Young Life. I volunteered with Young Lives in California, mentoring teen moms. And for most girls, camp was the best week of their lives. Camp was a turning point in their lives, offering these young moms a helping hand in parenting their children rather than killing them. I beg of you, hold principle and virtue above political expediency and adopt this ordinance protecting the unborn of Hillsdale. I just want to leave you with a Bible verse. It's Proverbs 15, verse 3. It says, the eyes of the Lord, whether you believe in him or not, that's my version, are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good.
Thank you, madam. What was your name again?
Judy DeVries.
Judy, thank you. Appreciate you. Thank you for coming to town.
Hello, City Council. My name is Candy Carter, and I am a resident of Ward 4. Let me lead off by saying that I'm very disappointed that I even have to be here this evening, and I am very shocked, to say the least, that this is a topic of discussion in our town tonight. Some of you have came here tonight with your mind set on a yes vote on this matter, and I would like to say, shame on you. You're exemplifying bad government. You're attempting to pass unjust policies and cheating those who you govern of time and resources in doing so. You've already made your decision without listening to the voices in this room and the voices that have elected you. And these are examples of bad government. I'm looking at a couple of you directly who qualify as these examples. The ordinance that's put forth before council today is here under the disguise of protecting the health, morals, and welfare of the citizens. This ordinance does none of those things. Instead, the individuals that drafted and favor this ordinance are seeking to criminalize what is lawful behavior while using the citizens as an extension of the government. You are asking that citizens turn on one another to operate as a reporting agency. You would rather see civil lawsuits that harm our neighbors than actually working on effective policies and change in our community and the end to the need for such measures. This is lazy governance. A yes vote on this ordinance shows that you are not willing to put in the real work that it takes to keep abortion services from even being a necessity in the first place. Instead, I see some of you yes voters would rather hide behind the agenda of a man from Texas and have the community do all the dirty work for you. Are you scapegoating your responsibilities because it's too hard or maybe too much work or effective change just doesn't happen quick enough for you? If truly the issue at hand here is reducing the need for abortive services, and we already have the knowledge and the tools to do so without the overreach of big government into our personal and private affairs. Here we are, instead of working towards a goal that the entire community can get behind, the council is spending its time considering an ordinance that is based on select personal beliefs. The proposal would target only specific members of our community, while spending time and resources that should be better focused on the more necessary and pressing needs in this community. There would be good signs of good governments and effective leaders if we had leaders who addressed and tackled current problems and not imaginary ones that they've made up that do not exist in our community. This ordinance has made it very clear that it has every intention, at the very first moment that it can, to criminalize its citizens. It even goes so far as to include legal maneuvering for delayed prosecution. Is this what the council was elected for? To criminalize citizens engaging in lawful behavior? Since these things weren't part of your agendas when you ran for your position here, I'd like you to ask yourself why they are your positions now. One would not even have to commit any of the offenses listed on the ordinance, but even having the mere intention of doing so would be legally defining you as a criminal. Is this what Mr. Veer feels would make our city achieve higher morals and welfare, having more members of our community behind bars? We have seen in recent years a shift of distrust and division within our communities nationwide. This ordinance would further divide us locally, turning neighbors into suspicious agents of the court. Is this how we want Hillsdale to be known for? Instead of finding ways to bring people together, council's going to find ways to tear more of us apart? I've heard various different opinions from different issues that this council has spoken on, but there has been a very consistent tone of personal freedoms smaller government, greater sense of family and community, personal responsibility, the disdain for oppressive governmental tyranny, and love of the Constitution. Members of council, I ask you here tonight, what happened to those values that you have shown before?
Thank you, Andy.
Candy.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
My name is Sherry Lemke. I live in Ward 4 on Howell Street. I come to you today with a very different perspective. The women in my life were the abortionists of Hillsdale County, and I was the one who had to bury them. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of babies. Some were very tiny, and some were bigger. That began my work at 3 years old. There are many men in the Republican Party as well as the Democrat Party that are well thought of in Hillsdale County, and they were the fathers that brought their women to my mother and grandmother. I will tell you one thing, even if the babies were yay big, they were feet, there were hands, there were heads, arms, fingers, there were screams, there was all kinds of scream and yelling, not from the mother, from the baby, and many times babies inside of her womb. I would put those babies in a slop bucket, and I would then go out the back door, walk down the steps where the man is sitting there in the car watching a little 3, 4, 5-year-old little girl, long blonde hair, going to the garden to bury his baby. Oh, as far as you're concerned, these are wonderful men. They can't stand to look at me because they're still traumatized by what they did. They're still traumatized that there was a little girl who had to take care of their responsibility. The crying, the mothers, the bones, it was horrendous and it was awful. It is murder. It is murder. It is murder. There's no one in this whole room who can tell me anything different because I know better. I saw it. I smelled it. I touched it. My hands were in their blood. I am very happy to think whether we have abortionists in Hillsdale City or not, let's not go back to those backwoods days. There are babies buried all over Hillsdale County. Hundreds, hundreds, thousands, thousands. And I'm not talking about they're buried in cemeteries because they're loved. No, they're all in shallow graves. That was part of my work too as I was a little girl. It's murder. It's murder. It's murder. God says that He knew us before He knit us in our mother's womb. We were already created. And I understand the scripture also says that what you do unto the least of these you have done unto me. Who can be the least of these more than a little baby who are being ripped from their mother's wombs? Today, I minister in maximum security prison in Women's Huron Valley. All of the women of Michigan reside there who are in prison. Oh, they have killed, some of them don't care. They have robbed, some of them don't care. They have talked to me about all of the different crimes they have committed. But the one that absolutely brings them to tears and they fall on the floor are the children that they chose
Sherry.
to abort in the womb.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Thank
No, I
you.
do.
I know you do, Adam. I appreciate you too.
Thank you.
Hi, council. Thank you for your time. My name is Leisha Taylor. I'm a resident of Hillsdale County. Almost 50 years ago, the U.S. Supreme Court decided Roe v. Wade. This landmark case secured a women's right to an abortion. Since then, anti-choice activists and politicians who feel entitled to tell others how they should live have been trying to take that decision out of a woman's hands. That's exactly what this unconstitutional attempt is that you guys are trying today. Any ordinance that attempts to ban an abortion is a violation of the constitutionally protected rights of all people. I know this town has always been an advocate of protecting its citizens' rights. That is a big reason why many people here, myself included, love this town. Please don't stop protecting our rights now. Ordinances like these have damaging effects for those seeking abortions by stigmatizing the procedure and confusing people by making them think abortion is illegal. It's not. Criminalizing pregnancy loss casts pregnant women as vessels rather than people. This can jeopardize a woman's access to safe health care, as threatening healthcare providers with frivolous lawsuits will affect the level of care that we as women receive. So-called sanctuary cities for the unborn are designed to confuse people about their rights, shame people who need abortions, and intimidate organizations who provide access to reproductive health care. Let me also state that we currently do not perform abortions in this county. We do, however, have a birthing center. We also have women who have miscarriages here. It's alarming to think how this opens the door for miscarriages to become a crime. This could also discourage a woman from seeking critical medical treatment when having a miscarriage for fear of persecution, or doctors for treating her for fear of persecution. Abortion rates have significantly dropped over the last 25 years, mainly in areas where women have access to effective contraception and health care. Data shows us that in areas with stricter abortion restrictions, it has the opposite effect and raises the number of abortions and unplanned pregnancies. See, ordinances like this do not have the outcome that you think it will. Abortions will keep happening. They did before Roe v. Wade. They'll be happening in secret, behind closed doors, and women's life will be put at risk. I urge everyone to take a long, hard look at this ordinance and think about your end goal here. Do we want to be a city that starts violating the Constitution? How would you feel if there were laws out there that violated your rights? That violated your body? Do we want to be a city that divides our community with laws like this? Should this council even be making decisions that ultimately affect the health care received for all people in this county by the only hospital we have? I'm going to end with a quote from my girl, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The decision whether or not to bear a child is central to a woman's life, to her well-being and her dignity. It is a decision she must make for herself. When government controls that decision for her, she is being treated as less than a fully adult human responsible for her own choices. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Appreciate you.
Hi, my name is Shannon Geener, lived in Hillsdale, right down the street here for about 22 years now. I had no intention to get up here and talk, but I have 4 children, 8 grandkids, and I have one I lost. I was 4 months pregnant. There was a heartbeat, and then there wasn't. An abortion, everyone talks about it as a one-day act. It's not a one-day, you do it and you're done. I hurt for my baby. All these years later, I hurt. I know a lot of women who had abortions, and they hurt later, knowing what they did, or, what people had told them it wasn't a baby. We have a lot of data now. Data shows heartbeats and fingers and the whole thing. It is a child. There is tons and tons of free birth control out there. I mean, a lot. There's really no need for someone to really get pregnant if they don't want to. There's a lot of young girls out there. I was on birth control at age like 15. I went, got birth control myself. So they can't say that use birth control and abortion. It's kind of like, oh, I'm pregnant, now I'll have an abortion, and then I'll get pregnant and have another abortion. There's free birth control. Abortion is not one of them. It's not a one-day act. For a woman, you hurt. The woman hurts a long time. My kids, I lost, it's been, I think, 36 years. years, and I still think about that baby. You know, and women, when they get an abortion, you can't tell me they're not thinking about that baby later. And a lot of times they get pressured into having an abortion. The people we're talking here, you can't afford a child, you don't need it. I was also a foster parent. I had 4 children in our home. You know, there are foster homes out there. And lucky now, those are my grandchildren. But this is not, an abortion is not birth control. If this city, I know we don't have the law now, but if we set a precedence for other areas, they're gonna show. Give them free birth control, offer it. Make sure every woman who wants birth control can have it. Make sure every man who wants a condom has it. It's not just a woman here. Thank you.
Thank you, Shannon. Appreciate you.
Hello, Heather Trichka, Ward 1. I'm the one that called Mark and asked him to be here from Texas. I feel that we have a strong pro-life community, but just to be sure, I went around to all the different wards, had about 400 signatures. My family and I walked around and made sure that we hit each different ward, just kind of randomly going door to door, asking people what they thought and if they wanted this ordinance to go ahead and sign a petition. It was well received. We also went to churches that were in the area inside the city limits, since this is a city ordinance. It was well received very enthusiastically at the churches. And I wanted to spend my time talking about and listening to some different testimonies. Hillsdale does not have abortions right now. They don't perform them at the hospital. We don't have abortion pills available. What I want to do with this ordinance, and why I thought that this would be a good idea in the first place, was because we want to keep abortions out of Hillsdale. This does not affect the life of the mother. This is not, I talked with an OBGYN earlier today that works at the hospital. This does not affect anything that it's doing. It doesn't change anything that they're doing now. Keeps it from purposely taking the life of a child. This has nothing to do with miscarriages. This has nothing to do with the life of the mother. And the thing that is concerning, as Namu mentioned earlier, is the Biden administration pushing abortion in all cities in America, which they've said that they're going to do. They would like to get the abortion pills into the cities. There is a push to deregulate abortion pills and send them into our cities, but through the pharmacies and through mail. We don't want that here. And even people that I talked to that were marginally pro-life in the wards, when I told them what the point was of doing this, to keep it out of Hillsdale, they absolutely agreed that they did not want mail-order abortion pills. They didn't want young people taking these pills and having abortions, and the parents don't even know that they're pregnant and bleeding out and having all the complications. They thought even the marginally pro-life people realize that it's a very bad idea. This doesn't take away any rights of anyone right now. This is nothing, we're not going to change anything. It just keeps the Biden administration out from the push that they're trying to do. And the sanctuary city, the ordinance, there's some misunderstanding on that. The law that's on that is Michigan law right now. And what we're saying is in Hillsdale, we want to enforce Michigan law as it's written. That's where the law comes from. And I know there's some misunderstanding on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate you.
Hi, I'm Erin Fuegel. I'm a resident here in Hillsdale County. We were told to be ashamed, but I am not ashamed. I am proud to be pro-life. When Roe versus Wade was legalized, we did not have ultrasounds like we do today. We did not know that babies smiled or sucked their thumbs and they would actually move away from pain. Yes, these children feel pain. They are unique with their own DNA that will never be repeated. Legality does not equal morality. The Holocaust was legal because these people were not people. Slavery was legal here recently, not that long ago, because they were not people.
And now abortion. We say that they are not people, but they are. And they all deserve the right to life. And somebody had spoke about miscarriages as the same as abortions, but they are not. Miscarriages are the loss of a child. My mother lost a child. I've had friends lose children. Those children were real. And their life meant something to them. Abortions are the intentional taking of that child's life, and it's not right. And so I stand with this proposal.
Thank you. Farron, is that right, Farron?
Farron, yeah.
Thank you, Farron. Thank you for coming. Appreciate your time.
Hi, everyone. My name is Paul Karlovich. I used to live in Hillsdale. We now live in Hillsdale Township, just outside the city limits. I'm not going to say a lot today. I support this resolution. We have 6 children. Actually, we have at least 8 children we know about. 2 of them miscarried. What I want to say, I think you guys have the opportunity to do something really great in this little town here, this little town. You guys can pass an ordinance that is a beacon of hope for everybody in Michigan, for the unborn, for those that nobody wants to protect. And you guys that is an awesome thing, and I applaud you for even thinking about it. So I know that you got some work to do. I'll be praying for you, and I just hope you'll make the decision for the unborn. This area is strongly pro-life, as you all know. So your citizens are behind you as well. So thank you for your time, and my prayers are with you. I know it's a difficult thing to face all this opposition, and so just know you have one supporter here in the Karlovich family.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Hello, Stephanie Myers, Ward 1, and I'm not here to shame anyone. There is not an abortion provider in Hillsdale. There has never been, and there are no imminent plans to develop a clinic. The idea that this topic is being discussed tonight at council is disheartening. A hypothetical situation as opposed to something that actively impacts our children and families. We have no lack of actual problems in Hillsdale, yet we are wasting time and resources and potentially a substantial number of resources on this issue instead of focusing on the drug problem, the lack of affordable housing, crumbling infrastructure, and even fairly simple upgrades to accessibility. Those things are remaining under-addressed and unexamined. We have opportunities to make real difference in the lives of Hillsdale families, and yet we are here arguing this. This city has prided itself on individualism with a strong stance against government mandates and ordinances, particularly during this last year. Well, this surprise ordinance directly counteracts that ideology. And alongside any pro-choice or pro-life arguments that are made, the language is written lends to the criminalization of what city residents do with their time and their personal resources. It criminalizes employers and insurance providers with abortion coverage and riders. It bans the sale and distribution of medication that I myself have been prescribed one of which, not for an abortion, but over the course of a difficult delivery of my very wanted child right here in Hillsdale. It creates fear about the limitations that it will place on our local doctors during tragic emergencies. This ordinance is setting the stage to pit citizens against each other, asking them to report the intent of their neighbors. Creating a culture of suspicion and distrust amongst neighbors is the antithesis of what it means to live in Hillsdale. And at this time, across the board, we currently have a petition that has 540 signatures, not just as pro-choice or pro-life, but against this ordinance as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you.
Hello, council members. My name is Emily Shalkeski. I'm a staff member with Students for Life of America, the largest, most active pro-life youth organization in the country, And I just want to let you know that the young people of Michigan are proudly pro-life. I grew up in Michigan my entire life, and many people in this community have been waiting for an ordinance like this. And it's an incredible opportunity that we have to protect the most vulnerable among us and restore justice and dignity to the smallest members of our community. I want to offer some remarks on behalf of the pro-life generation, on behalf of millennials, and on behalf of Generation Z. We have been targeted by the abortion industry, and there are young people my age, I'm 24, who should be in this room with me right now, who are not here because they were victims of abortion violence before they had a voice of their own. And I'm here to speak especially for their right to life, their right to liberty, their pursuit of happiness, and their constitutional rights. Abortion is not health care. It doesn't heal. It scars a mother, degrades her, kills her innocent baby, who is not a potential life, but a life that already exists. Pregnant women are already mothers, and they need support from their communities, as many of these community members have expressed, not exploitation and betrayal thrust upon them by the abortion industry, who profit from killing their children. Abortion is violent, it is brutal. In order for it to be successful, it must dismember or poison the smallest member of a family. Nearly all abortions stop a beating heart, and they are not compassionate solutions to unplanned pregnancy. Abortion does not solve problems. It will not make a broken relationship whole. It cannot make an impoverished mother rich. It will not heal the abuse that a woman has endured, and it cannot give a young girl the life that she had before she was pregnant, because that abortion remains with her for the rest of her life. Abortion adds violence and loss to situations that are already very difficult. The state has a vested interest in the future generations of its citizens. You have a vested interest in the future of your city. And yet, abortion lobbyists will tell you that we need abortion, and that if there was no other place to get health care in the country that provided comprehensive care to women. But pro-life resources, fortunately, outnumber the abortion industry. There are fewer than 600 abortion facilities today across the states, but there are more than 2,500 pregnancy resource centers and 8,000 federally qualified health centers that offer free services to communities in need, and you have them here in your community. Women can access all of the healthcare services that Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers say they provide, and then some, at clinics that do not brutally kill their children and harm women. The decision of the city to outlaw violent behavior such as abortion is not new. Many cities choose to enact laws for the well-beings of their citizens, such as prohibiting facilities that sponsor dogfighting and strip clubs, etc. And they make these decisions all the time. People in Michigan, from my experience, and especially here in Hillsdale, recognize the violence of abortion, and they've elected you as representatives to represent them in all concerns. But our most important concern, as liberty-loving citizens of this country, is the concern of protecting innocent, vulnerable life in our communities. Lawmakers in Hillsdale have the right and duty to prevent the violence of abortion from coming into this city. It's very fortunate that it isn't here now. Your young girls are safe now. And this ordinance shouldn't be controversial, because every city, town, and village should protect preborn life and women who are exploited by the abortion industry.
Thank you, Emily. Appreciate your time. Podium's still open. Any more public comment?
Hi, my name is Joshua Fincher. I can't remember our award right now. Oh well. Resident of the city of Hillsdale. The proposal to me, and a lot of people have spoken about abortion, Bible, other sorts of things, but what particularly strikes me as problematic about it is the way that it criminalizes speech without specifically defining what any of those speeches are. It talks about instruction, it talks about pressure, but it doesn't actually define those. In a county, in a city like ours, we shouldn't be trying to criminalize speech without necessarily saying what that speech actually is and what precisely it should be defined as. Further, the city council in the ordinance urges us to consider our fellow citizens to be criminals, and you're urging a belief from us. Does the city council have the right to tell me what I have to believe about other people? Is that even your place to tell me what I'm supposed to think, or what you require me to think in your own law? As a city that believes in the freedom of speech, with a host of Hillsdale College, we shouldn't be playing so cavalierly with people's freedom of speech, or trying to legislate what sorts of beliefs they should have about their fellow citizens. My religion, Judaism, doesn't actually consider abortion murder, doesn't believe that life begins at conception, Yet the city council is telling me that my religious beliefs should be put aside by me in preference to their demand on what I believe. And that's not acceptable because you don't get to determine what my religious beliefs should be, and you certainly don't get to criminalize what I believe or tell me what I should think about my fellow citizens. Yep.
Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate your time, buddy.
My name is Chris Goffis. I live in Hillsdale Township. Let me be clear from the outset. I'm firmly anti-abortion. I'm disgusted by the recently escalating rhetoric from the left that even acknowledges the murderous slaughter of innocents. They celebrate this grave evil, and I think that's a huge problem for our nation. But I'm also concerned about the content of this particular ordinance before you, and please allow me to explain. Many are here tonight in support of an ordinance they haven't read, and they don't know the legal questions involved with. It was written by an outsider who's flown in to tell us what to do. The petition was circulated without the opportunity for its signers to read the entire text of the ordinance, and council members were told to meet with this outsider who drafted it without the time to read it this past week. It's a rush job on an issue that requires prudence and serious thinking. This activism has taken advantage of well-intentioned churchgoers in Hillsdale by asking for their support without giving them all of the facts. The possible problems with this ordinance include questions about free speech rights, prosecutorial questions, the coming lawsuits that this outsider has openly promised will come to our town. The ordinance as it reads isn't even enforceable without action by the Michigan legislature or the Supreme Court. And in reality, this ordinance isn't even that anti-abortion, given the concessions to mothers who make the choice to murder their children. If it passes, it means nothing. This rhetoric of we're taking action doesn't cut it. These talking points aren't enough. Our fine council members should have the time to read and discuss the entire ordinance and ask these important questions. Why is it being rushed through? This is nothing more than a political grift to advance the stature of its leading proponents. It's a way for us to pat each other on the back and feel good about being more pro-life than the town down the road from us. But what does it mean to be pro-life? From years of following the so-called pro-life movement as advanced by establishment conservatives, I constantly wonder if these advocates truly want abortion to end. Because if it does, their opportunities to take advantage of conservative voters in order to promote themselves will end. The current proposal before the council is simply the latest local manifestation of this corruption. Residents of Hillsdale, more than most towns, are committed to self-government. We take care of our own, and our residents are by and large anti-abortion. The ordinance as written is useless, and I'm not sure that we need a similar ordinance at all, given that, unless I'm terribly mistaken, there are no abortions performed within the city of Hillsdale. But if this is something that Hillsdale residents truly want and think they need, I propose that you, council members, draft your own ordinance with the assistance of local Hillsdalians. We don't need a snake oil salesman flown in from out of state to tell us how to run our city, especially when that salesman will be thousands of miles away when the legal trouble resulting from this poorly constructed ordinance eventually comes. This snake oil salesman and those who brought him here want to use us as a PR stunt in order to further their own political agendas. But if we're going to do this, we need to do it right and on our own terms. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob. Appreciate you.
Brandon Hadlock, I am a resident of the city. I am in favor of the life of the unborn. I am in favor of the unborn's right to choose. One of the speakers said that a woman has a choice of whether to have a child, and she's right. A woman does have that choice, and that choice comes before conception. But sometimes a woman doesn't have a choice, such as in cases of rape or incest. And so I propose a modification to the language of the ordinance that would allow, in cases where the woman did not have a choice, that she could have an abortion. I think that'll allay some of the concerns of the people in this room. Having said that, I would hope that the mothers in those cases would choose the life of the child, but because she did not have the choice in this case, the mother, I would hope that she would be given the choice at this point. I would also like to propose that the language be modified in the ordinance so that citizens are not encouraged to report or tell on each other, nor to consider each other criminals. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hadlock. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
My name's Ryan Cody. I live at 429 Northwest Street, citizen of the city of Hillsdale. And like Chief, I once served my country more years ago than I care to remember. But I served again recently in the Trump administration in Washington. I've twice served this nation because I believe in its founding fathers, and founding principles. Chief among them, in our Declaration, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We cannot have any other rights if we don't have a right to live. So I stand before you not only in support of the ordinance, but also in support of some others who have said, I think it is wise to take our time. I think it's wise to read it fully, to have a public hearing, maybe where it's a little bit bigger, a little bit cooler, and we can have more comments. I don't want to see this rush through, but it is important. I'm not quite as prolific as Mr. Beer or Chief's folks, but I do have 10 children. So I can tell you a little bit about life, and it's beautiful, and we should support it. And we should debate it, as we are. But we should support life. I'm sure none of you thought you'd be in this position one day to be chosen by God to make this sort of decision. But like it or not, as Chief said, you will be judged by how you cast your vote. Eventually, whether it's tonight, or a week from now, or a month from now, or a year from now, you will have to make a vote, and you will be judged. It is important that you make the right choice, and I believe it's important that you stand up for life. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
My name is Georgianne Hilgendorf. I'm a resident of Hillsdale, and I'm totally unprepared, but I feel I have to tell my story. And I'll try to be brief without a lot of details. But as a child, I wanted to always grow up, get married, and have a family, have children, many children. And as I did get to the age where I could get married, and when I met my husband, we were in our 30s, and I never, ever had the thought that I would never be able to conceive. It just never occurred to me. And when husband and I realized we couldn't have any children, we had gone to the doctor and it was all confirmed. I went to God. And my husband was really the first one that said to me, he said, God's gonna do this. And I've heard it, but it wasn't really in my heart at the time. And then eventually I came around and I agreed with him and I said, yes, God is going to do this. So, to make a long story short, we ended up going to a prayer meeting and we were prayed over, and a month later I took a home pregnancy test and I was pregnant. And I give all the glory to God because it was him. He was the one. So I believe every life, every baby is a miracle, including my son and my adopted daughter. And if it wasn't for God giving me my son and my daughter, my adopted daughter, I wouldn't have grandchildren. But I am blessed today to say I have 6 grandchildren. So I just want to say that I support this proposal, and I stand here for the unborn. They are innocent, and they need us to defend them. Thank you.
Thank you, Georgiana. Appreciate you.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Tim Sullivan, longtime resident of Hillsdale County, currently reside in Hillsdale Township. First, like to thank Council and all those who serve. It's not an easy job. It's a thankless job. Often it's hard to get people to run. And here you sit in front of the citizens serving. So I want to thank you. Also thank you for your attention and giving everybody a chance to speak, because you could have managed the meeting a little differently. I wanted to address something different. There have been some very articulate speakers, very passionate speakers that have come before me. I want to look at this a little differently. Is it procedurally, it's my understanding that you might not vote tonight, but you might move this forward to a more public hearing and take this up in a different way. And you commented earlier, Mr. Mayor, how many people are here and how many are interested in this. So I would just simply ask, as a matter of procedure, that you each think about, the role that you serve for each of your wards, and that you move this forward and give the citizens a chance to speak and to address this more fully and more thoughtfully. But again, I want to thank you for your deliberation and the way that you're handling this issue. And also, thanks to all the citizens and those who have spoken so well this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Heel up there, sir.
Thank you.
Honorable Council, Most Honorable Mayor, my name is Adam Matthews. I'm from the city of Lebanon, Ohio, and we were the first city in the Midwest to pass an ordinance similar to the one that you're contemplating tonight. There's many things that have been brought up. Many people talking about the instant constitutionality of this. I happen to be an attorney. I was not admitted here at Hillsdale, but I was here with my wife at homecoming. She is the better half in many, many ways. And I want to say thank you so much for being the home of this beacon of conservatism, this beacon of intellectual and individual rights here. What you're doing is brave, what you're doing is courageous, and I applaud you for sitting here and listening to everyone here. Though it is not as scary as many are putting out there. What is written does not contradict Roe, it does not challenge Casey, it does not challenge the abortion jurisprudence. In the same way that Roe says abortion may not be restricted before viability, Casey actually supersedes Roe and says abortion may not be restricted, providing an undue burden on the mother. There are currently, as many have stated, no abortions provided within the city limits of Hillsdale, Michigan. Once you pass this ordinance, there will be no abortions provided in the city limits of Michigan. And as such, there is no increase of the undue burden, and it fulfills the constitutionality within that. In the Sixth Circuit, which covers Ohio and Michigan, we have that constitutionality held up in that reasoning with the Down syndrome abortion ban, where because the mother has the same rights, the same days, the same locations of being able to procure abortion services, that abortion ban was upheld. That mothers cannot abort babies based on a diagnosis of Down syndrome. This is the same type of rationale that would allow this type of ordinance to pass. Now, many of you are conservative, and there's many flavors of that. And you have your conservatives and you have your libertarian bents, but there is a reason that every elected libertarian that we have, from Rand Paul to Mike Lee to Justin Amash, are all pro-life. And this is a post-partisan discussion. I am quite proud of my family. They were born in Louisiana. They passed, a Democrat state senator with a Democrat governor passed a heartbeat bill. This is something that can be unitive, but it is important. Every person here speaking for and against, they wouldn't be here if this didn't matter. And I believe that you, Hillsdale, Michigan, a city of 8,000, can follow Lebanon, Ohio, a city of 20,000, that passed this in May and has not yet been sued, even though the ACLU knew exactly what we were doing. All they could do was put up a whiny billboard after. We wrote it in accordance with the law in the same process that you're going through. I encourage you to do this, and it fulfills the same type of role that a city does. I've heard from your council members that you banned marijuana dispensaries. It's the same type of medical thing. Here in Michigan, East Lansing banned gender conversion therapy, which is again a medical procedure. It is up to cities to stand up for the values of their constituency, and I urge you to do the same. Thank you for your time, and I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Adam. Like your name, buddy.
Thanks.
Hello, my name is Mark Lee Dixon, director with Right to Life of East Texas. I came all the way from good old Longview, Texas. There are cities all across the United States that are discussing this, and I'm here today because someone from here reached out to me expressing interest in seeing Hillsdale, Michigan outlaw abortion. You may say, well, why would they reach out to me? Well, I've been involved in all 33 cities that have successfully outlawed abortion within their city limits. From Waston, Texas, which was the first city, to the last city of Centerville, Texas, to all 30 cities in Texas, 2 in Nebraska, and 1 in Ohio. And there have been lawsuits, and we have won. We have found victory. Lubbock, Texas, the largest currently, 270,000 people, 11th largest city in Texas, 83rd largest in the United States. They were sued by Planned Parenthood, represented by the ACLU of Texas and ACLU National, and they lost. Abortion has been outlawed in Lubbock, Texas, and since June 1st, no babies have been murdered. I know some people in this room have said that this ordinance wouldn't do anything, that this is unenforceable. Well, in Lubbock, Texas, it worked, and it became the first abortion ban, total abortion ban in history since Roe v. Wade to actually go into effect and stop abortions in America in one location. There's an attorney that's willing to represent the city at no cost, the city and taxpayers. His name's Jonathan F. Mitchell. He was a law clerk for Justice Scalia. He served on President Trump's legal team at one time. He is someone that has been quoted in court opinions by Alito and Thomas, and he's willing to represent you guys. Another attorney of mine is actually a Hillsdale College grad, and he's representing me in a case of saying abortion is murder. That's Stephen Klein. He's actually represented Project Veritas as well, but he can vouch for Jonathan Mitchell. But this is something that it's a matter of doing what's right. I want to encourage you. If anyone wants to talk to me, I'll sit up for 3 hours and talk with them. I'm very approachable, and I've got a lot of experience on this, and this is something that can be done, and I would just encourage, set a date in the future, sometime in a couple of weeks, have a public hearing. If you want to connect with me and connect with Jonathan Mitchell, even other attorneys as well, I'd love to talk to you guys more about this. And last but not least, what really drives my heart is Amos 5:15, which says to hate evil, to love good, and to establish justice within your city gates. And perhaps the Lord, the God of hosts, be gracious in the remnant of Joseph. I love Hillsdale, the city, because my grandfather, who influenced my pro-life beliefs, he was a constant donor at Hillsdale College. And my grandma, I got to tell her, Grandma, guess what? I'm in Hillsdale. And she said, we've been there. Me and Grandpa was there. She told me all the stories about going to Donors Banquet, and it just made her, my 90-year-old grandma, so proud. Thank you guys so much. God bless.
Thank you, Mark. Good to see you tonight, bud. Behave yourself. Behave yourself.
All right. My name is Lashway, Vice Chair of the Hillsdale County Republican Party. Listening to everybody today, it'd be shocking to understand that abortion's already illegal in Michigan under state law. I don't see why more government would be beneficial. If you want to declare a sanctuary city or something like that, I don't think that'd be a problem, but I really don't see why we're all here.
Thank you, Lance. Appreciate you, bud.
My name is Carson Cooley, and I'm from the 3rd Ward, and I agree with Lance Lashway. But thanks for having me back. My speech is going to be shorter this time, I promise. To my understanding, the Constitution is very important to, everybody in this room. I would like to quickly outline why the ordinance to ban abortion in Hillsdale is an overreach of the City Council's authority and is out of line of Michigan state law. So the state law clearly says that local leaders cannot pass an ordinance that directly conflicts state statutes, as this one does. This ordinance goes against Hillsdale residents' 14th Amendment, as the Supreme Court has decided abortion to be the law of the land several occasions, the most famous being the rape. The third one, other city councils have rejected similar ordinances for being outside local leaders' authority, as should this council before me. Despite all of that, many cities have passed these bills, and it hasn't gone too smoothly. It has just caused uproar in the cities, division amongst everybody, and it has just caused ruckus. This ordinance has been traveling around through Mark Lee Dixon, and he has been the main proponent of this bill. He has no ties to Hillsdale, and he uses his social media to spread misinformation about sexual and reproductive health care, including contraception and abortion. So I raise the question, why are we wasting our time? We need to get back to actually doing the work that we elected our local leaders to do and focus on our local issues. There are no abortion clinics in the city limits. So I don't understand why we're all here. And I'm encouraging everyone to vote no, and I also want to publicly thank Adam Stockford and Lance Lashway for helping me with my car problems the other day. I was broke down mid-city with smoke coming out of my car, and they gave me coolant, so I want to thank them for that.
Thank you, Carson, very sweet. Appreciate you, buddy. Podium still open.
Hi, I'm Laura Whitelaser, and I live just outside the city limits. We lived in the city limits for the first 5 years of our marriage, and live literally, I think, 25 feet outside the city limits currently. So Hillsdale County resident. I've been here since 1975. I love this community, and I appreciate all the comments here tonight, but I think that we sometimes get sidetracked. Some of the issues at hand go into minutia, and really we're here to defend life. We're here to speak for the 60 million souls that can't speak for themselves since abortion was made legal in Roe versus Wade. I have just one story to share, and I want to just say we have to stand for truth, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it causes ruckus. We have to stand for the truth, and the truth is that we have a right to life, each of us, born and unborn. Sometimes I spend some time in front of Planned Parenthood in Jackson praying. I don't try to cause a fuss. I stand there and pray. And I hold a sign sometimes that says, "We will help you." That's what it says. And a young man drove in recently and stopped and parked and approached me. And as he was approaching me, I thought, well, I don't know his intention, but here I stand. The Lord has put me here, and whatever happens, happens. Well, his name was Chris, and he sat down and he said to me, "My girlfriend and I had an abortion 3 years ago." And he said, "It really messes with your head." I said, "I know it can be hard. I know that sometimes you're haunted by these decisions that have to be made." And he said, "Do you hate me?" And I said, "No. No. I love you." And he said, "But how can you?" I said, "Because it's easy. You're a child of God, like all of us." And he said, I think my baby was a girl." And I said, "Why do you think that?" And he said, "Because she appeared to me. She's a person. He knows it." We all know it. So we stand for life. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate you.
Hi, my name is Joshua Antonini. I live in Montpelier, but I go to college here in Hillsdale, so I'm here pretty frequently. Just wanted to, talk about this issue and sort of streamline it, The reason, so many of us are here, I'm a pro-life individual, sort of where I'm at, the reason we're here, is because we think that, you know, we believe that the unborn are people, you know, and while I am a religious person, I don't think that you need to, you know, invoke any sort of religious statutes or anything, you know. I think that, you know, a simple syllogism is if it's wrong, then, well, I mean, murder is wrong. I think that's pretty uncontroversial. And, well, the contentious part is, you know, abortion is murder, therefore abortion is wrong. Well, is abortion murder? I mean, or killing people, innocent humans, you know, and well, on a biological level, I mean, two humans make humans, they don't make a squirrel. So, you know, on a biological level, sure, the unborn are humans. But philosophically, do they count as persons, you know? And it seems like every arbitrary point, I mean, you talk to a few pro-choice people, I talk to many, a lot of my friends, actually a lot of my family are, and, you know, every person's gonna give a different arbitrary answer, you know, oh, it's when the heartbeat starts, or oh, it's when they're cognizant of things that go around, or oh, it's when they're aware of themselves, or oh, it's when they can breathe air, and, well, I mean, which one is it, you know? And biologically, fertilization is the point that all embryologists, the overwhelming majority of embryologists agree, is where biologically it begins, but philosophically, you know, people, you know, when is someone valuable as a person? And if we say, oh, well, it's this arbitrary thing, then, well, you know, some people have more of that, some people have less. If it's cognizance, some people have more, some people have less. Does that mean they're more valuable? And I don't think that's true. I think that all people are valuable, you know? And so just to center it back to why we're here, you know, we're here to talk about the unborn and to defend them because we believe that they're humans. We believe not only that they're humans, but that they're human persons who are valuable and that the value of them cannot be attributed to some quality that can change over time. Because, well, you know, what makes us all in this room equal, you know? And it's no random arbitrary characteristics, it's that we're all humans, you know, we're all people. And, well, you know, it's not our size or level of development or our environment or our level of dependency. None of that makes us more human, you know? So I appreciate y'all being out here to listen to all of us, you know, come and talk about it, but it just shows that we care and we think it's important, and that is this piece of legislation sort of what y'all are doing, is it worth our time? You know, I mean, it seems to me that, well, if we're here trying to affirm the dignity of human people, you know, that seems very worthwhile. You know, so thank you.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you. Podium's still open.
Penny Swan, Ward 4. First, let me state clearly, I am against abortion and very pro-life. I do have issues with much of the content in this ordinance, though. The way this ordinance came to pass, I have a huge problem with. Number one, it bypassed all the normal channels. It didn't go to any committee to be vetted. Nobody was allowed to do their due diligence. Just boom, all of a sudden it's in the council packet Thursday night, and there's a lobbyist from Texas in town staying at Councilman Stuchel's Airbnb. Transparency is sorely lacking in this ordinance situation. Number two, before it hit the council packet, evidently as reported in the news, and Heather has the signatures, people were going around door knocking. And 400 were in favor of this. This all happened before the mayor and much of council had any idea about this ordinance. Once again, transparency is sorely lacking in this issue. I know my door wasn't knocked, and I've been talking to people literally all weekend since Friday night, almost 24/7. Nobody's door was knocked. Once again, transparency seems to be a huge issue with this. And with these 400 signatures that keep getting talked about, that I would think should be in the public record. That should have been in the packet. That was done before all this was put in the packet, so those should be in there, so we could vet those signatures. How many of those people read the ordinance before they signed? I actually know the answer to one of that, because my sister talked to a friend who signed it. She wasn't given the opportunity to read it. This is a very touchy subject. I mean, most everybody, I think, is against murder, but how can you be in favor of something you haven't even read or vetted? Once again, transparency is sorely lacking. So how about this get sent to the O&G committee so they can do their due diligence, and then a public hearing so the rest of the citizens of Hillsdale can do their due diligence and have the same opportunity as the 400, although they weren't given their due diligence because they didn't have a chance to read the ordinance. And then we can restore the transparency of this issue and get on with our life. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny. Appreciate you.
Ted Jansen, city resident. Looking at this proposed ordinance, the sections are quite disturbing. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I love my job. I love helping people. On the other hand, at times I hate my job because I have to deal with the ugliest part of life. I've dealt with victims of incest, victims of rape, victims who are still hurting. They're 55, 60 years old. Victims that had to have the unwanted child from incest or rape. There's nothing in this ordinance that protects them. Basically it says, suck it up. You have the kid, that's it. Doesn't address the psychological damage. Doesn't address the suicide that result from not being able to get rid of an unwanted child as a product of rape or incest. I have a few that were parents were in the satanic cult. They're totally devastated. Second part of this is businesses will be penalized if they have a provision that allows their employee to have an abortion. How many businesses do you think will come to town if they know that they have to either change their policy or they have to be prosecuted? Another provision is anybody who offers any information about abortion to a woman who's a citizen of Hillsdale can be prosecuted. Somebody in Jonesville can be prosecuted. What happened to freedom of speech? This is total overreach. I know that this council prides itself on getting rid of overreach. This is exactly what it is. Now we have the carpetbaggers came to town, claim to be pro-life. Texas, capital punishment. Center of the United States. What's the saying? We try them and we fry them. Not pro-life, is it? Mayor, council, the circus has come to town. Don't be a monkey in their circus. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Podium's still open.
Ben Quiggle. I live on Howell Street. I'm pro-life and I value life. At its inception, I think what we're trying to do with the ordinance is really a neat idea. I just think it needs to be vetted more. Maybe we need to do more public hearings, take a look at it more, and see what the actual language is before we agree to anything. It's extremely important to have an ordinance like this, though, because you never know what's going to happen down the road. And sure, we don't allow abortions in the city now, but there are a lot of pressure happening right now from various groups, and we don't know what the future is going to hold, and we need to kind of take a stand and be a voice for the unborn. But I'd like to do it correctly, and just to make sure that the ordinance is going to be effective. Thanks.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate you, bud. Seeing no more public comment, we'll close the podium and move into the consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we've got approval of bills, city PPU claims for July 22nd, payroll July 8th, finance report July 22nd, city council minutes July 19th, TIFA targeted development minutes June 29th, TIFA minutes of May 18th, governance board June 17th, board review for July, Michigan Municipal League Board of Trustees election ballot, Hillsdale College alley closure agreement, 2021 archery deer hunt, and then we've got an alley closure, a street closure, another alley closure. They've all got noise ordinances on them for Hillsdale College. Any discussion regarding anything in the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Support. Motion on the floor from Councilman Soha, seconded by Councilman Zeiser. May I please have a roll call vote, Katie?
Councilperson Veer,
Yes.
Sharp,
Yes.
Stuchel,
Yes.
Pratt,
Yes.
Sizer,
Yes.
Mayor Stockford,
Yeah.
Councilperson Soba,
Yes.
and Briner.
Yes.
8-0 approved.
Thank you, Katie. We'll move into communications petitions. There's 3 items in it. Give me 1 second here. First is a letter from MEPC. Second, Michigan Gas Utilities. Third, Hillsdale County Recreation Plan Resolution. Anything important in here we need to cover, Dave?
Just, the MEDC letter was basically notifying us that we did not receive, the grant on the culvert replacement project.
Oh.
They said that there were 4 communities than us.
Sure.
Which somewhat find hard to believe, but,
Did you mention something? Future, help for future?
yes, but I did have a meeting with them to talk about how we could improve our application and, into the future. So hopefully something will change on that and they'll have money down the road. The Michigan Gas Utilities letter is just, it's a letter that they're in front of the rate commission and they have to provide their customers with the ability to comment. So this is to comment on their rate plan moving forward.
I love the Michigan gas. I love how they did natural gas in Michigan, so you can use different providers. I wish they would do that with electricity, but too many electric consumers, energy lobbyists in Lansing to do anything like that. So.
And then the Hillsdale County Recreation Plan Resolution was put in the packet or provided to us from NAMU in regards to her work on the county planning commission.
Thank you, Namu. Any discussion on any of those items? Seeing none, there's no introduction and adoption of ordinances. We'll move into old business. First one is the American Rescue Act update. Dave.
Yep, I'll just make this short. We still have not gotten the money yet, but we have received the application and we've filled it out and submitted it to the Treasury in regards to that. So hopefully here in the next month or 2, we might actually see those funds. We're, based on the last number we've seen, we should be receiving about $837,000. Now, as I've said previously, there are restrictions on that use.
Of course.
Water, sewer, fiber, and some other projects related or personnel matters related to COVID implementation. So I will keep you posted on that as we move forward.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave regarding Councilman Beer?
On that, you said that for the American Rescue Act, could you actually use that for the culverts? If it's water and sewer? Monies?
Possibly, yes. And we could also, we have some of our road and infrastructure projects that we have in the community that we're looking at that have substantial either water or sewer work as part of it. So we're looking at various options to talk to council about.
Councilman Zeiser.
City Manager, the state, if I'm not mistaken, informed us that we could not use these Biden bucks on the leaf collection equipment. Is that correct?
It doesn't seem to fall.
That
within
won't
the
fly.
guidelines.
Okay, all right. When do we plan on going forward with that purchase? Is that?
And Jake is here and he can comment on it further, but we are in the, are in the queue for the piece of equipment to do the leaf collection. We should be, our plan is to start it this fall.
Okay, so as soon as the next cycle coming, when people put leaves on the curb.
That is the plan.
But I'm sure that, like any other industry, supply chain is completely blown.
That could potentially be an issue, but Jake I had him speak to the supplier here recently.
Yeah, I had some conversation with the manufacturer last week. We anticipate that piece of equipment being completed anytime. It still has to come from Canada. So there's another wrench potentially in the works, but we would expect to take delivery hopefully by the end of August, I would assume at this
we went with the one that's outfitted for the different modular functions, if we decide to go that route for snow clearance and,
Yeah, the equipment we brought to the committee is what we selected, yes.
okay, great, beautiful.
Any more questions for Dave regarding the American Rescue Act? Thanks, Dave. We'll move into item B, infrastructure construction update. Jake?
Yeah, so I didn't get a chance, good evening, Mayor, Council, City Manager. The first one I'll discuss will be Elm Court. Had some conversation with that contractor this afternoon. We're expecting them back to pick up where they left off later this week. Water main, sewer main are complete. I think there's a couple services that still need tied over. And then of course, a little bit of curb and patchwork on those mains. So there's not a tremendous amount of work left there. I don't have a timing when that will be completed yet. But again, they should be back on it later this week. In regard to the special assessment district projects, the contractors have started primarily on the Hillcrest area. They've also completed some work on the Riverdale side, primarily the outfalls for the storm sewer issues in both those areas. And they've started removals, and in fact, they're almost complete with the removals on the Hillcrest chunk. They will be moving, I would anticipate, sometime tomorrow over to Arborview, Riverdale, and then they'll finish up at Williams Court. I would guess most of those removals will be done the next couple of days. We're anticipating the concrete contractor coming in later this week, Wednesday, Thursday, to start putting that concrete back, the curbs, the ends of the drive approaches, some of that stuff. And then after a cure time on some of that concrete, the milling should proceed after that, probably 10 days from now, is what we're anticipating over there. Again, that's a September 4th completion date. They're on track to make that. We don't anticipate there being any problems. It could take most of that time, but weather will affect us. Hopefully we stay fairly dry and don't have any more of these deluge rains, inch and a half and half an hour kind of thing. Those really cause problems. And then the final thing I'd like to discuss is the transfer station. Most of you probably seen that building is gone. They are prepping the foundation to accept the new building and also for the new floor. The building is on time. The demolition has been running on schedule, so at this point, I don't see any issues. Knock on wood, right? So we're still looking at an end of September completion to get that facility reopened.
Very good, thank you, Jake. Any questions for Jake? Councilman Zeiser?
I don't mean to put you on the spot on this one, because we all understand it's a recurring issue. I was out of town, but I saw on social media that we had the same flooding issue at Center City, and again, I know this is a recurring issue, but I was wondering if you had any insight as to what happened, and I guess it's going to continue to be the same grim situation that it has been for the past 50 years in that area, but I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, so the city manager and I have had some discussions on that. City engineer had a vacation, I had a vacation, we're still trying to get all everything aligned.
And they scheduled the flooding for your vacations.
So I do want to say that we've done a lot of work. We've restricted some of the upline water. We actually did have ponding. We flooded out the Midtown parking lot, retaining some of that water back, trying to give that water more time to clear in front of the city center, and it still isn't enough, obviously. You're right, we did have that same flooding there. But I'm referring to the 1.5 inches of rain, I think in 27 minutes, I think was the official number that I heard.
Bonkers.
I mean, ultimately, we need to engineer that. We need bigger storm pipe. We need retention. It's going to be very expensive to fix that. Again, we've got a building sitting in a low spot. That's been a water problem my entire life. Some of you who lived here longer than I have probably can attest to that too. The Consumer Center parking lot always had water in it. Before that, it was a grocery store, I think. It's an issue. It's an ongoing problem. The intention is to work with the city engineer to come up with a solution and probably a price tag to bring to this group for what that's going to take. That's, I guess, all I can say at this time. I don't know what else to do with that.
Okay, I mean, we certainly appreciate the diligence on the issue, and it's a shame for the residents that it keeps happening, but it seems like it's a very old issue in that area, and I'm interested to see how much that will cost, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was in the millions, because it sounds like it's a construction intensive project, and I wish that, you know, these things never work out. I wish this was the sort of thing where there was a lot of road there that we could displace anyway, and maybe use some of the Rescue Plan Act money. And
I do want to say the contractor is not completely derelict in this. For those of you who don't know, there's a giant detention system under their back parking lot to help buffer some of that. It's just nowhere near enough, obviously.
and as you say, I mean, we're looking at an inch and a half and a half hour. That's, I mean,
We had flooding.
that's a lot of water to
We had
displace.
flooding in town that day that my staff has never seen before. Arch
Right.
Avenue, the highway was completely covered in water at Arch Avenue. We've never seen that before. We had flooding everywhere in town we've never seen. You know, our system just, nothing's designed to handle that quantity of rain that quickly. It doesn't matter how clean it is, it's just a function of physics.
Right.
You can't take that much water away quickly.
Any more questions for Jay? Got something else, Mr. Chairman? Need to get with you later this week about Hillcrest. Nothing needs to be hashed out right now, but just some stuff.
I may be aware of it already.
You probably are.
It's been resolved.
Awesome.
We have an employee that's not on site anymore, so.
Well, it's probably been solved then. Thank you, Jacob.
Yep.
All right. Let's move to new business if nobody has anything else. Item A, vacant land offer, 203 Development Drive. Kelly's not here. Dave, go for it.
So we have an offer on one of our pieces of vacant land there in the industrial park. As the memo states, we have about 200 acres currently. We've received an offer for $20,000 for a 3.92 acre parcel from Jones Lang LaSalle, Michigan LLC, which I believe is a roofing company, if I remember correctly. The offer has gone to the Economic Development Corporation, or EDC, and they are recommending to the city and to this board to move forward with the sale. So that being said, I would ask the council to consider approving moving forward with the sale of that lot for $20,000.
Yeah, let's get rid of it for sure.
Is that a motion? I'd second that.
Any
I think
questions
we all
for
would.
Dave?
So moved. All right, so he's making the motion. I'll
Yeah.
second his
Okay,
motion.
all right, there we go.
All right, that's fair.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Soha, seconded by Councilman Zeiser. May it please have roll call vote, City Clerk.
Councilperson Sharp?
Yes.
Stuchel?
Yes.
Pratt?
Yes.
Zeiser?
Yes.
Mayor Stockford?
Yes.
Councilperson Soha?
Yes.
Reiner?
Yes.
And Beer.
Yes.
8-0 approved.
Thank you, Katie. We move to item B, City of Hillsdale Employee Handbook. Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. As the states, the city uses a handbook to provide a consistent set of policies and procedures for our employees. The handbook has not been updated for several years. So this reflects all new federal and state requirements for employers as well as employees. And the handbook has already gone to O&G for review, and they've made some recommended changes which are included in it and recommend its approval. One of the, a couple of the key things that have been put in the updated manual include switching new employees hired after from July 1st forward to a PTO type system. Our existing employees, and historically we've had vacations, sick, and personal banks, and they were allowed to accrue, which allowed for, you know, when someone would retire after 30 years or whatever, or 20 or whatever, allowed them to be paid out for those banks, which after a period of time is a substantial amount. So moving to this PTO system is an effort to eliminate those large bank payouts in the future. We're also negotiating the same policy with the unions. And you'll see that in the fire contract that's coming up. We're also recognizing Martin Luther King Day as a holiday. Because that has not been in our holiday list to date. And then just some various other cleanups. But said, this has gone to ONG committee and they are recommending its approval as well.
Any questions for Dave? Go ahead, Mr. Zeiser.
I heard, although I apologize, I haven't given this the read it deserves, that some of the previously proposed language on the social policy that includes committee members that we kind of debated at that last meeting may have made its way into this one. So I just wanted to just raise that. I'm not looking to be contentious about it, but I wanted to see where we're at. And I'm just curious, so with the MLK Day thing, I can't remember, were we previously closed? Did we close city operations? Is that actually changing anything that we do substantively, or is it just putting it on paper?
Well, we, up until this point, we had not recognized the day as a holiday.
So we were open for normal business?
So we were open, but the county is closed, the state is closed, and so this is recognizing it and closing for that day.
Okay. Do you know anything about the social policy?
It should be consistent.
It should be consistent with the last debate?
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
I'll double check that, but it should be consistent.
Okay, I appreciate that. I have a feeling, because again, I haven't given this the read it deserves, but I think what could have happened is sometimes these things get drafted prior to X, Y, and Z, and
we'll double check to make
Okay.
sure that that is the same language that's currently in effect.
okay, good.
Any more questions for Dave? Entertain a motion to review and approve the updated city handbook.
Just approve for usage. Support.
Second.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Beer, seconded by Councilwoman Pratt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right, item C, broadband task force. Yeah, no kidding, huh?
Okay, so this is an item that we've been talking about for a period of time over the last several years. When we formed a high-speed fiber committee to look at this and had members from businesses, the colleges, that partook in kind of a strategy session for this. At that time, it did die at council, at the council level, but since then, COVID has came in and we've realized, I think many have now realized that, the work from home is having to be prepared to go to school from home, have increased the need for high-speed fiber, not only within our community and county, but nationally. During the time that schools were closed and they were doing online learning, routinely the bandwidth would be clogged up here in Hillsdale. In fact, Dave Holcomb from the county could actually see it when it was getting clogged up, and he would make comments about it. So that being said, this broadband task force is something that we've been working with the county, Dave Holcomb on, Merritt, who does our high-speed fiber at the schools and the college, of how we move the community and the county forward with promoting high-speed fiber. Creating this task force allows us to look at grants that are out there, because there is potentially grants on the horizon to help get higher speed internet to rural communities like ours. So that being said, we're putting together this task force. 3 people who have served on the previous committee who have volunteered to serve on the committee moving forward. Mr. Barry Hill, who was also the VPU board chair, Mr. Patrick Flannery, who's the CFO of the college, Steve Veer, local businessman. They have all agreed to serve on it, but we would like to get a member of this board to serve on that committee as well, given the importance of getting higher speed internet in the community. So So that's what this was about, is just to bring that up and kind of update you on that and ask council to consider someone either volunteering or appointing someone to serve on the committee. The county is doing the same thing, and this will also include others from outside, out in the county as well.
What do you guys think?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Is this, considering like previously that the city would engage in laying the fiber and becoming the provider?
Would be kind of laying the groundwork for something like that, yeah.
And I recuse myself because I would be a competitor.
Of course. Very,
That would make sense.
well understood.
Mr. Mayor, at this point, we don't know what that would look like, but we've talked about it in the past, and that would probably be.
Do we know, and you know, maybe I'm looking into the crystal ball too much, do we have any prospects of either recruiting the private sector or somehow using the grants that are out there to subsidize the private sector to entice them to do this? Because every time this comes across our desks, I'm always going to be uncomfortable with the idea of creating a new regulable utility, just philosophically. So, first of all, I don't think I'm the one to serve on this, given that viewpoint, but is there any realistic possibility of that happening, or has that ship sort of sailed?
So, ACD, who is currently in town doing some business and some residential customers, they have been expanding their service within the community and trying to expand it, but they are on a very
on a glacial scale, right?
They are on a, yes, very slow path, which many have thought has been too slow because they've been around for many, many years before my time, when we put the original fiber in.
Are ACD the ones who, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, did they fail to meet the terms of their own RFP? Or was that another provider?
No, that was not them.
That was not them.
But, you know, like I said, they do have customers in town, and they are providing a service to both business and residential. But they aren't a large customer or a business like Comcast or one of those.
Right.
So they have to really plan and prepare for their projects. This would be potentially, one of the things is like Coldwater, they provide their internet service, Marshall does through a system like this. That could potentially be looked at, and the only reason I would say that we might want to look at it is because what we face here in the community is creating revenue streams for the city, and this is probably, in regards to revenue streams, probably one of the last few we might have, or last one we might have. So it might be beneficial just from that standpoint, to have that discussion. It might not be in our best interest, but it should be on the table.
Any more discussion? Council members? I don't think anybody wants to volunteer either. I will serve on it. I've had conversations already with JJ regarding this, so if you guys are all cool with that, then it's something that I'm interested in. How's that?
Do we need a motion?
I mean, if you guys want to pass it as a motion, that's fine, but.
All right, do you want to take the motion then?
I heard you say you're making a motion, I support it.
Motion on the floor from
All right.
Councilman Zeisner, seconded by Councilman Briner. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Wow, thanks for your faith, guys. Appreciate it.
Do you want to see if we can do the firefighter thing first, Mayor? Before we do?
Sure, why not? You guys want to get out of whack in the agenda and do item E before item D?
I know the chief is here.
I don't see the chief here.
He's still here.
Okay. Okay, we're gonna do item E before item D, and, Chief. not Chief Rogers, Chief Hepburn.
No, I think this is chief.
Yeah.
It's also deputy chief.
He's here too.
Mark, yes.
All right.
So this is our first, and the chief can answer any questions I might miss or point out some things. So this is the first of our 4 union contracts that we will be eventually bringing forward. This is with the fire department, the local 961 of the International Association of Firefighters. Most of the language in the contract is historically been negotiated and is pretty much the same. The language that is different is highlighted in red in the packet. But the key things that are part of this are it is a 3-year contract. The annual raises would be 2%, 2.5%, and 3% for the subsequent years. It would be transitioning new hires to the PTO time versus the vacation, sick, and personal time. And then moving in June, after June 30th of 2022, we would be moving new hires from the defined benefit plan to the defined contribution plan, which I know has been a goal of council is to get everyone on the defined contribution plan. And so we are working towards that. And this would do that with the city's contribution being 10% and then mandatory 5% for the employee.
Sure.
And then the Martin Luther King Day off as a holiday, and then an increase, a slight increase in their annual food allowance. So those are the main things that are negotiated as changes to the contract. Chief?
Yeah, the major language changes was they had built into their contract automatic promotions based on years of service, not merit, which could have some detrimental effects where we could end up with 3 captains over time, 3 lieutenants, or nobody in a position of rank. So we removed that it's now an eligibility at certain years of service as long as you meet certain qualifications, and it's up to the city to determine whether we need a captain, whether we need a lieutenant, or how many, based on what they're doing and the qualifications.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions for Chief? Ladies and gentlemen,
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Soha?
Chief, could you help me understand, in some of the new language which is in red, it talks about employees hired after June 30th, 2021, but then later on, in some of the other editions, it says employees hired on or after July 1st, 2022. And so I was just curious why the 2 different years,
Because we're technically in a hiring process now and had discussed that and had approval for that with a pending retirement. We have one of our full-time firefighters is off getting their pay through their accrued time before their official retirement date. So this person, we're not all the way through the process yet, but we're leaving it the same for this person. So it'll be effective next year instead of this year. That way we don't have to deal with any issues that could come up from that.
but to clarify, the agreement starts this year and goes
Yes,
through 24.
This next hire would fall under the DB plan, and any after that, effective June 30th of next year, is all DC.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Chief? Councilman Reiner, go ahead.
Yes, on page 18 of your document here, it states assignment of additional shifts. We had crossed out in the event that a shift vacancy is due to holidays or Kelly days, part-time firefighters will be allowed the opportunity to sign up for open shifts prior to them being offered to full-time firefighters on an overtime basis. So do we scratch that? We will offer overtime first?
If you remember, we had 3 full-time firefighters for a couple of years, which left vacancies. We established from the part paid ranks classification that wasn't a contract that's part-time. We had 3 that were qualified that they could pull shifts over there and do all the operations that were needed. So at that time, to make it even, I guess, across the board for the overtime, those 2 types of days were offered first to the part-time, others offered first to the full-time, but when we went back to 4 full-time firefighters, that 4th firefighter was fit into the vacancies. So relatively, there were no vacancies left for first choice for the part-time, so it's really irrelevant now. So just took that language back to where it used to be to the full-time as first choice. And if there is something that they can't fill or don't want to, then it can go to the part-time.
Awesome, thank you.
Any more questions for the chief? Entertain a motion to approve, IAFF Local 961 union contract.
So move.
Motion on the floor, Councilman Briner, seconded by Councilman Soha. May I please have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Councilperson Pratt,
Yes.
Sizer,
Yes.
Mayor Stockford,
Yes.
Councilperson Soha,
Yes.
Reiner,
Yes.
Beer,
Yes.
Sharp,
Yes.
and Stuchel.
Yes.
8-0, it's approved.
Thank you, Katie. We'll move back to item D, declaring Hillsdale a sanctuary for the unborn. Let me get back to it in the packet. Councilman Beer, this was your request. Would you like to take it?
Certainly. I've been a pro-lifer for, as long as I can remember, a long time, 25, 30 or more years. And when you're dealing with a situation, you always try to get it down to the simplest form. And it's about when life begins. And to imply that it starts any other time except at inception would be probably untruthful. And we open the council chambers, every council meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. And we talk about liberty and justice for all. We don't talk about liberty and justice for some, we talk about for all. And some of the things that in the public comment, we're basically talking about a death of an innocent child. And if we go the other way, we're talking about creating a lot of ruckus. You have death and you have ruckus. To me, that's a pretty easy decision. This council, for years, has put money toward domestic harmony. 5,000, I think this last year was 6,000, okay? And what do we do that for? To protect a mother and her child. And it's a good act by this council. And I think this, with the sanctuary city, that further strengthens and really our argument about we're for everybody in the city of Hillsdale. And I like to speak for the unborn because they don't have a voice. You can hear outside those windows the people that are voicing their opposition to us. Someone else mentioned the fact that this hasn't been transparent. Okay, because everyone hadn't read it yet. Well, we aren't gonna pass anything tonight because the proper course of action is we set a public hearing. And this is being transparent, which is obvious because we had a packed council chambers. We got more people on the outside, so to imply that we're doing this on the down low, I can't buy that either. Also, when we set the public hearing, it allows people to read the ordinance, and the ordinance follows state of Michigan law. Right now, Roe v. Wade is the law of the land. Okay, and if that is ever overturned, guess what? It gets kicked back to the states. And currently in the state of Michigan, we're a pro-life state. And the laws that we had on the books before would become active. They also talk about criminalizing the woman that seeks the abortion. Multiple times in the ordinance, it says no criminality charges would be brought against the mother. This is basically putting all the emphasis on the abortion providers. And I think it's a good statement for this council to just, I mean, really, tonight, it's not a real big deal from the standpoint, all we're gonna do is vote for a public hearing and allow more people to voice their pros or cons on the ordinance. And I just would like to say that I include the unborn in the human race. And I don't really base a person's value on whether they have high intelligence, they're not gonna amount to much, because we're all created in the image of God. And when you take it back to the fact that they have a right to life, so the unfortunate act of incest and rape, which is horrific and bad. And so to justify this atrocious act, you're gonna kill the innocent child. What other crime does a parent commit that you kill the kid for? I mean, and because of the opposition to what we wanna do, we're getting all that blowback. But, I fully support this ordinance. And if it saves just one unborn, it's worth it.
I'll just add to that. I'm not gonna give a life death situation talk, but let's talk ordinance and the details of this, because that's kind of where the discussion is gonna be. And, so, like I said, it's about the ordinance and how it's worded, and there is a lot of confusion. When I first read it, I had a lot of questions, and rightfully so. The issue is the person who wrote it. I mean, we've heard him called a carpetbagger. I've heard him called a carpetbagger, whatever else, somebody from Texas. This gentleman is a Baptist pastor. Okay, this is a mission he's had. He's helped 33 cities do this. And the reason the ordinance may look a little confusing or a little misunderstanding, it has to be, because this is battle tested. It has gone to court and it has stood. And the person who will defend this is Jonathan Mitchell. Rob and I had the opportunity to talk to him last night. Jonathan Mitchell served on the Supreme Court with Scalia. He was his clerk. He's presented 4 cases in front of the Supreme Court. He's a professor at Stanford University. He's Texas AG, or was. He was on Trump's transition team and is part of his legal team. So we're not dealing with some, hayseed here. We're dealing with the top constitutional lawyer who's written this so it will stand up in court. Our job isn't to dissect legalese. That's the lawyers and the judge's job to do. We just have to make sure we've got the right support behind it, and we do. We do. And like in the transparency, who read it, purpose for the signatures was see if there was enough interest to engage these men, these people to help us with this. They aren't going to just fly in any cities, hey, we want to do this. That didn't happen. We had to make sure we had enough interest. We did. The signatures came quickly. So we had it, so that wasn't done in a transparent, and yeah, there was nothing to read. We were explaining what a sanctuary city was. And we have a councilman who come up from Leavitt, Ohio. They just passed it. I mean, this does not stop anything other than the city of Hillsdale. And Mayor, I want to congratulate you and this council on some of the things we've already done. For example, we stopped marijuana from being sold in this town, okay? With your leadership, we were one of the first cities to get rid of the mask deal when we had city council meetings and to meet in person. So
this is not government overreach. This is preventing government overreach, because on January 22nd, Biden administration and with Harris made a statement. They want abortion available in every single zip code. What we want to say is, fine, not here, not in our town. We are not going to kill our children. We are not going to kill our future. And we just need to to get everybody to understand the ordinance. And Mark is willing. We can set up Zoom calls, discussions, to pour over this, read it. That is our job, to understand this and understand and ask the question what it is. And we have a number of citizens that want this, and that's our job. So I'm with Tony. We need to have a public hearing. Today was not a public hearing.
No, today wasn't a public hearing.
No, it was not.
I feel like a lot of people in the audience are out there tonight thinking
Yeah,
that we were
there's a
gonna
lot.
vote on this tonight.
Exactly. There's a lot of misunderstanding, and we need to help clarify that and take away the misunderstanding. And yes, he is staying at my Airbnb. I'm gonna lie that. I mean,
Well, I know that.
okay.
My turn. A woman's body is her rights, her choice, pro-choice. What she does is her choice. Now we're telling her she doesn't have that choice if we pass this. My opinion. My opinion. Why is this not going to the ONG first to look at it? We've got this put on us Thursday. ONG has not had a chance and opportunity to look at this. Will's not here. This should go to ONG and let them look at it before we do a public hearing. They should have the right to see this and clarify and ask the questions. We're not given this opportunity if it goes to the public hearing. It should go to ONG, and then the ONG would make its recommendations. You're taking that away from us. When Robert approached us up masking his proposals and stuff, it went to ONG. And he said if he ever does it again, he'll go to ONG. This is very important. It should go to ONG, and it should be looked at.
So you guys aren't opposed to this
No,
going to ONG?
I'm not.
So when Will's back, right now he's out of town.
Yep, he'll be back on the 13th.
I think it
But-
should go to ONG, and it should be looked at first, and then whatever clarifications or questions we have, we may have questions for the city attorney in there that we're not sure about. And we could bring them up to him and make sure we get the right answers. I wanna make sure we make the right decision on this. I don't want it to be jammed down my throat, I don't wanna be rushed. You called me 2 weeks ago and said this was coming.
Yes, I did.
And then it gets thrown at me in my council packet, I'm looking at this. I've had people approach me about this, and they're not happy with it.
Okay.
They're saying, you could turn your neighbor in. A $500 fine, 90
These are the
days in jail.
misunderstandings that are going on, Bruce, and that's why I called you to.
It's
This
not
was
pretty misunderstanding when it says it right here.
That's why we need to get the clarification. What does it really mean? A lot of this stuff doesn't mean anything until Roe versus Wade is overturned.
And that's the Supreme Court's decision.
That's right.
Not us.
So this is based on Michigan law. So Roe versus Wade is the way it is. So that doesn't happen.
And abortion is still legal in the state of Michigan and the United States until the Supreme Court makes its decision.
And-
Which they should, because they've got enough conservative judges on there.
And there's
to make
nothing
their
to
decision.
stop a woman to go to wherever she needs to go to. It happens all the time. We're not stopping anybody from going to Coldwater or Battle Creek or wherever.
But you've got it in here, they could be arrested if you help aid them. If
Not
somebody
until
was to
Wade.
say, here's where you need
These-
to go to get this,
those are the
they could be charged.
Those are the questions that you need to write down, and we can give you those answers
Which
and
is
why they're.
ridiculous to
What's-
do.
You,
It's
we're-
Big Brother
you and I,
watching over you.
you and I are not lawyers. There's a
No,
reason
we're
for the,
not.
there's reason for the
But
legal
I do use
ease.
common sense, what
The-
I'm reading here, I do not
There's
like.
reason for the legal ease, so if it does go to court, this ordinance stands on it, it can stand. It has never been defeated yet, and they've gotta be tweaked to every
There's always
state.
a first.
So anyway,
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
You may.
just a couple of things. First of all, with respect to, and as part of your discussion, you should read it because it's available to be read. The court case involving the city of Lubbock, who adopted a version of this ordinance, Planned Parenthood versus Lubbock. The court in that case, the federal district court, essentially punted it. They said, we're gonna dismiss the case because Planned Parenthood doesn't have standing to contest the validity of this ordinance. It wasn't because they vetted a So you need to understand that. And from a Michigan law perspective, in that case, the court did reference some pretty distinct differences between Texas state law in terms of what the locality is authorized to be able to do by way of local ordinance, as opposed to what Michigan can do. So the Texas legislature took some steps to make it more clear that the local municipality had the authority in the first place to pass an ordinance on that subject matter. That's not the case in Michigan. So there are some open questions, quite a few of them, as to whether or not you even have the authority to adopt such an ordinance in the state of Michigan. So those are all things that would need to be looked at in terms of.
So you're gonna look at it,
that
right?
you look at before you take action on the ordinance.
that's-
And
Well,
that was considered.
I mean, under no circumstances, I didn't wanna rush this thing or take action on it
Again,
right away.
who's rushing anything? I mean, we're not rushing.
So honestly, like, on Thursday, let me just explain something. And you've said some nice things to me tonight, Councilman Stucci,
Well,
so I really
I met
appreciate
them.
that, I do. Good, I'm happy, I believe you, I believe
Okay.
you when you say that. Thursday, when I met with Heather and this gentleman, he seemed to be very adamant about it being in the form that it was in. So Thursday, right, you know, I had a tragedy in my family, literally met with this guy 20 minutes after that.
Yeah,
And I was in a funk, I was in pain, I wasn't paying very close attention to what was going on. So then when I got home and I started looking at it, there were some things that are concerning to me too, like the encouraging neighbors to snitch on each other.
Had the same questions,
Yeah, so I expressed these apprehensions to Mr. Dixon, and the response that I got back from him was, just to let you know, we passed this in Odessa, and every council member that voted against it, well, they're gone now. So my old carpenter father would call those fighting words. So I did get a little stirred up about
Okay.
that. And honestly, another thing that rubs me the wrong way about this is the lobbying, and the fact that it comes from a lobbying group and it doesn't, like Bruce said, that it doesn't come like from this table of representatives, the people of Hillsdale, like every other ordinance that we've ever voted on. I just have a great mistrust of lobbyist groups, and I think you guys probably, I would think so too, whether they have views that I agree with or not. NRA, Sierra Club, any of them, I don't want any of them drafting ordinances for this city, because I feel like they've ruined DC and they've ruined Lansing, and they're literally what Trump was talking about when he was talking about the swamp. He was talking about lobbyist groups. So I do consider myself pro-life. I think abortion is morally reprehensible, and I would consider looking at this and possibly using this ordinance as a place to draw examples from, but just to pass it in its whole by itself, I'm very uncomfortable with that. So if we could keep the spirit of it, and address some of those things that I think are repugnant to the Constitution. And I know I'm not a constitutional scholar either. I do have a degree in it, like Councilman Zeiser does, but I'm definitely not a constitutional lawyer by any means. So finally, I talked to Shannon. It's actually somebody that Mr. Dixon put me in touch with. It was a mayor from Big Springs, Texas, and he was telling us. I was asking him personally over the phone. I was like, so you don't have a problem, because he was a libertarian. I was like, you don't have a problem with this in the ordinance or that in an ordinance? And he was like, well, we're looking at different ordinances. And
different states, yeah.
I was like, oh. He told us it took several meetings to put theirs together. They reviewed it. They brought it back several times. They took their time with it, basically. And he was like, Adam, take your time with it. Don't get all worked up. You guys know I get worked up easily. I mean,
That's what I say, that's what we wanted to do. This is just to present the ordinance, and so, geez, yeah, let's keep moving forward. That's what we're talking about. This is just an introduction.
so let's move forward with it.
Yeah,
I agree. Is anybody opposed to that?
Who's the chairperson?
Will's not here.
I know, so yes, I agree, we'll send it to O&G and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I don't think anybody ever said not to do that. And again, this
Well, it
rush
just
stuff.
sounds like it's a
I
rush
know,
thing.
I keep hearing that, but I don't know where's that coming from. I mean,
This
that's
is
part of,
pretty deep. What's
but that,
in here
I
is
know, that's
pretty
part of
deep.
the problem. There's a lot of opinions and, not factual evidence being laid out here. There was no rush to this.
So
That
there was
I'm
a-
aware of. I
there's a
mean, if there
reason-
was, I'm not aware of it.
There's a newspaper article that came out that said something about an emergency meeting needing to be held.
I saw that article too.
Yeah.
Was that the Breitbart?
Which had quotes from our state representative and from Mr. Dixon. It was basically like, now, this has to get done right now. And so I think that's
Well,
probably
it's-
what got everybody up in arms.
I didn't write the article.
I know.
I don't know people at Breitbart.
So, is it a motion to send it to O&G?
So moved.
Second.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Soha, seconded by Councilwoman Pratt. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. We've got no miscellaneous reports. We'll move into general public comment. During this time, podium will be open. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Please limit your trips to 1 to the podium. You can speak on anything you like at this time.
Now that I have the time, then I am not so nervous I'll finish what I started saying at the beginning of the meeting, because it is important. Allow me to reset a bit here. Recently, and Councilmember Sharp touched on this earlier, this council put Robert Soha in his place for presenting a convoluted resolution that would have declared the city's opposition to Governor Whitmer's emergency orders, the Equality Act, and a whole slew of non-existent boogeymen that the fear-mongering right-wing authoritarians have been using to energize what precious few among their base are still alive. Each and every whereas in that resolution addressed matters of state or federal government, not municipal, township, or county government. Despite some of you erroneously agreeing with Soha's ideology, this council correctly told him that it is not the job of city government to pass such resolutions, and nothing further came of it. Thankfully, tonight seems to continue that pattern, and I thank you for at least not taking any action on it tonight other than to move it to the O&G committee. But, I do have concerns about portions of it, keeping any portion of it really, but we can address those when we actually have the appropriate public hearing and the time to discuss that all. The people who are here tonight to oppose the proposed ordinance aren't really here to oppose the proposed ordinance. That's not to say that we don't care about this issue. We very obviously do, and for good reasons. But as several others said earlier, this is a broader issue. At the root of it, they and I are here to oppose this completely off-the-wall behavior. We're fed up with the attempts to do or not do whatever you want, regardless of what the will of the voters who elected you is, or by attempting to sneak things past us. We're sick and tired of your excuses. We've had enough of the red herrings and obfuscations. We're done with the lies and attempts to shirk responsibility or consequences. You have to be held accountable for your actions. I don't like the idea of abortion any more than the people who support the ordinance. But this is not up to government. Government does not have the authority to tell anyone, pregnant women included, that they have to do something with their own body that they don't want to do. You cannot consider a woman's autonomy to end at pregnancy. That's logically, morally, and ideologically disingenuous. This could have been about any number of topics. It didn't have to be abortion. It could have been anything. It just so happens that this time, 2 or 3 council members attempted to violate the right of body autonomy as quickly and as quietly as they possibly could. And that's nothing new. This has long been the tactic of those who want to do wrong in this city and county. It's the same way they've attempted to pass a number of resolutions and ordinances that they knew would not succeed if the public were informed and had the time to make their opinions known. Sometimes it's been stopped, but many times they've gotten away with it. That cannot and will not be tolerated any longer. I'm still nervous because I'm still rushing, but thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Put that in the round file.
Few points of clarification I want to make briefly. Odessa has not voted on this yet, but a story that was just released in the Odessa's American, they're actually putting a vote tomorrow to move forward with a public vote in outlawing abortion. So that is going before Odessa. Second, the statement about the Lubbock case, this is the letter from Attorney General Ken Paxton's office. And Judge Stone, the Solicitor General, is very clear in here that it is the position of the Attorney General of Texas that both with Senate Bill 8 and without Senate Bill 8, that the Lubbock ordinance is consistent with state law. So it's not that the state of Texas had to do something in order to pass the Lubbock ordinance and make it consistent with state law. Furthermore, there was lots of misinformations out there. More than willing to, I'll spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours on the phone with you addressing any concerns that you may have. There's some statements that were made about the insurance coverage. If you have a problem with that, you actually have a problem with what Michigan state law currently says on the issue. But again, last thing to point out is that my attorney has a really strong record in that the ordinances that have been put out have withstood the test. And so if you guys were to use this as an example and start making changes, depending on what changes those are, it could risk the willingness of Jonathan F. Mitchell to represent the city of Hillsdale at no cost to the city and taxpayers. And so, as I said before, there are people from this community that can vet the qualifications of Jonathan F. Mitchell. I know several people on council have talked to him directly. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Mark.
I must say the man from Texas has some balls to blackmail the city, say, you change too much, we're not gonna have our attorney represent you on a challenge to the ordinance. Just disgusting.
Thanks, Ted.
Worthy council, Mr. Worthy Mayor, I have nothing more to say about the ordinance. I wanted to say thank you so much for being a wonderful host. You have a beautiful city hall. I'm a little envious. It's beautiful. I want to say thank you to the police officers that have been here all day, and I'm sure they were out there today as well, helping protect the First Amendment rights to peaceably assemble. That's wonderful that they're all here. I encourage all of you to continue serving your communities. It takes a certain type of person to want to put your name on a yard sign, and I applaud that. To come and listen to people that you have to listen to. I encourage you to continue vetting all of this, working all of this, and not to have good, as I've heard, good process discussions amongst one another, treating each other with respect, but at the same time not hiding substantive disagreement and process disagreement, especially when I know that many that want to get something like this or others passed are willing to work, respecting that dignity across partisan lines or even intrapartisan lines against personalities is incredibly important. And I'm encouraged by what I see here tonight, and thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate you.
Speak again after having heard y'all discuss it, just sort of what I heard that other people, other citizens had raised, some objections kind of thing. That's sort of what I would sort of respond to that, as potential, interesting, whatever. I guess, it seems like a lot of people do agree that, whether that maybe the government doesn't have the right to be involved in abortion, whether they think it's right or wrong, or that it's a woman's choice regardless. And I think that, in response to that argument, I think that, well, obviously, people should have freedom, and the choice is important, and very, 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 basically every aspect of your life, it's important that we as individuals have self-governance, and all that comes with that, we have the right to, as they say, swing your arms around until you get somebody else, and then you can't hit somebody else, and so I guess the argument for, and not necessarily this instantiation of the ordinance, because, as it appears to be the common thread, not everyone has read it, but, if there are, snitching and stuff, I don't know if that's a good thing to put in there, you know, but like the mayor was saying, you know, maybe keeping the spirit of the ordinance would be good. And as to, you know, well, the woman's choice is important. I think, you know, women should have all sorts of choice, you know. I mean, I think they should, one, have the choice to be born, you know, but I also think that, you know, you have the choice to have all sorts of freedom until it impacts somebody else and directly hurts them. And I think that, well, you know, what we're arguing is that the unborn are human and they're people. And if they're people, well, then you can't hurt them, you know, and impact them. And so that would just sort of be the response to that argument. But thanks for coming out and listening to all of us. Appreciate it. So thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Seeing no more public comment, we'll close the podium. Moving to the city manager's report. Dave.
Mayor, I just have a couple quick things. As I sent out to all of you, we have posted for a new finance director. Joe is moving on to another community. Very disappointed, but understand in his situation, understandable. So we do have a new posting out in regards to that, and I'll be working with the finance committee for that. Just on some positive notes for this upcoming weekend, we have a number of things going on in the community. On Friday, August 6th, from 5 to 9, we have the Summer in the City event, which is being held in conjunction with the Hillsdale Elks Lodge. We're having a hog roast, a beer tent, a classic cars, a cornhole tournament, and live music. So that's on Friday night. On Thursday evening, at 7 p.m. and Friday at 7 p.m., the 2021 Summer Strings Festival is having concerts with all the youth. They're also bringing in a guest duo, Esme, who they perform Bach, Beethoven, Katy Perry, Led Zeppelin, Guns N' Roses on the violin and the cello, as well as the youth in the community. So that ought to be a good event. Rob should be able to hear that. And then on Saturday, August 7th, from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., there is the Will Carlton Farm Festival at the Poorhouse. We'll have food, baked goods, crafts, and many of other things. Vanished Hillsdale 10th reunion with Dan Beischer will be there, and Mary Wolfram talking about that. So plenty of things going on this weekend.
Awesome stuff, Dave.
Yep, that's all.
Thank you. Council comment.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Soha.
I just want to say I am inclined to agree with Councilman Veer on the spirit of the proposed ordinance, and I am very adamantly in favor of the right to life, as it's declared in the first inalienable right in our Declaration, and that the Constitution was written for ourselves, and our posterity. And our posterity are those unborn babies. And my agreement with Councilman Fear is very emphatic about punishing an unborn child because of the sins of its father. I know it's a terrible consequence, but a life is a life, as Dr. Seuss so eloquently put it, no matter how small. Or a person's a person, no matter how small. But I'm grateful that you were willing to take it to ONG, and that you were willing to, agree to put it there. And hopefully we can get our questions answered and bring it back to this table and make something happen.
I think we're gonna be just fine.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilman Soha. Councilman Sharp.
In the state of Michigan, we have term limits. I'm on my last term. So whatever happens here, you didn't drive me out. So I just wanna make sure you guys are aware of that. I have 3.5 years to go. I've been elected 5 times in the city. There aren't very many council people who say that. People like what I do and what I say. I listen to the constituents. I will go around and I will talk to my neighbors and I will find out what's going on. Nobody approached my house with a petition. Nobody.
Well, we didn't hit every single house.
Nobody approached my neighborhood except for down there where this sergeant of the sheriff's department was. He told him to leave. Cause I talked to him. So it's your right to take a petition around, and God bless you, but make sure the people they have to read this to understand.
Well, we needed numbers so we could get it written.
There's 8,000 people in the city of
That's right.
Hillsdale.
It's okay.
That's right, we know.
400.
All right, I understand things a little better now, because I was looking at it a little differently
Yeah, right,
too.
right,
I
that's
felt
just-
a little disrespected myself, like you guys brought it to me when all the ducks were in a row, but I think that was me having a pre-colored conception
Yeah,
of what
yeah.
happened, so. I
And again,
apologize.
Bruce, I called you 2 weeks ago to let you know this is coming, out of respect, because, and so then I'm hearing all this rush stuff. What the hell? There's been no rush.
It's
It's
just
been very
when you read it, it's very disturbing, some of it.
Well, that's what we need to get when I read it too,
That's where
I had a
ONG
number
will
of questions.
discuss that.
We had the same questions you're gonna have.
Well, fortunately, we have a professor retired from the college that is going to be very good on this.
That's right, that's right.
And we will have a lot of questions.
And he's a good teacher, so I think once he learns it, he'll be able to teach it and explain it.
It's gonna be fine, guys.
Yeah.
Any more council comment?
Motion to adjourn.
Move. Support.
Motion on the floor from Councilman Sharp, seconded by Councilman Stucci, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
We only had 9 minutes to go to have to vote.